We're going to be starting the Board of Education meeting on February 8th, 2023 at 6:02, and we'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin the meeting, I sincerely want to thank all of you who are here, including all the board members. Appreciate your attendance and interest. Item number 2 is approval of the agenda. To have a motion to approve by Lindsay, seconded. Second. Amanda. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item number, I guess it's item number 3, presentations and recognitions. We have a presentation from Strong coming up. Tina. Oh, come on up, everyone.
So before we start, and I know our students are the star of the show, they really are, but I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Mrs. Hurlburt. She has no idea what to do. She's probably gonna kill me tomorrow. But I do want to say that what she's done in the few months that she's been at Strong with the TI program has been nothing short of amazing. Kids are begging to get into her classes and they're really excited, and she did not have a difficult time to get students to come. As a matter of fact, she shared with me that somehow there was a misunderstanding among the students and they thought that they were coming to speak because we were going to cut the program. And it created quite the stir in the school yesterday that Tina had to put down. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Hurlburt and then our students. Thank you. It's good to see you all tonight. Ken told me we squeezed this 10 minutes down. Okay, good. It's good to see you all. I'm glad you're here. And I have the privilege of sharing 3 of just the most amazing learners that I think I've had the privilege to work with. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tina Hurlburt. I have been a teacher in District 13 for about 10 years. I started at Memorial. Mr. Bro was my principal at that point. I moved up to Strong teaching tech ed, went to the high school for a few years, and I'm back at Strong now teaching tech ed and Open Studio. And I know that we've talked a little bit about Open Studio. Tech ed is, for those of you who want to go way back, started in the post-industrial revolution. It was probably called industrial arts at some point. You might have called it shop. Yeah, tech ed. At Strong, we call it technology and innovation. We're working with, honing skills as craftspeople, working on practical skills. But I do hope that when you listen to what these amazing young people have to share, that you'll see there's also a lot of creativity, a lot of passion, a lot of collaboration, super sense of community where they're learning from each other, and I am learning from them every single day. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you, to Alexis Saracino, Jack Brady, and Al Davidson. Come on up.
Okay, perfect. One thing I love about TI, working with the machines, hands-on. Most classes are sitting around on their computers. Some machines are the scroll saw, miter saw, palm sander, belt and disc sander, and spindle sander. Also, wood burning. Second quarter kids learned how to wood burn, and I heard plenty of kids enjoyed wood burning. I saw some of the projects from second quarter, and they looked like they had so much effort put into them, and it looked like the kids enjoyed it. I love TI so much, I begged my parents to either put me in some classes or to get some equipment. My dad works a lot with wood, and it's something we can do together. On days I have TI, I can't wait. That always makes you feel better. It gives you time to relax.
A student has so much creativity, and usually they can't show that. Thank you. But in TI, you can unleash your creativity and have something physical as a result. I love how useful TI has been, and I definitely feel like I can eventually use the skills I learned in TI in the future. When I come home from TI, I'm so excited to show my parents what I've made and how I use my skills that I learned from TI, and I've been even making stuff at home with my father. Me and the other students always love coming down here, and it would definitely make someone's day knowing they have TI next period. Just by coming down here, we can talk and have a good time. One time I was at my locker, just heading back from lunch, and one kid, I don't know what happened, but he was just really sad. So we looked at his agenda, and then when he realized he had TI next period, he just absolutely was like, yes. He just loved because he just knows he can go to TI to have a better experience in school. And also in TI, you can express what you feel and you actually feel like you're being heard. And it just, so much of the stuff is useful, and I love TI.
Yeah. TI makes me feel safe. The environment of the TI room is very comfortable. I'm allowed to express myself without being judged. There were some challenging projects, but it wasn't stressful to overcome them as much as it would be in math, at least for me. In TI, we can look at each other's creative work, and you could tell that some people are very proud of what they made, and it shows. TI is such a supporting class and makes the stress on my shoulders go away at once I walk in. In TI, you can also get free choice on what you want to make and what materials you want to use. And when you're staining, you can pick the color from how light you want it or how dark you want it to be. TI is shaping kids for the future to make things into film.
Very good. Thank you.
So along with those tech ed skills, and Jeff and Alexa, they've all listed some of the machines and the tools that they use. We focus a lot on process, a lot on the progress, self-regulation. But I did want to show you some of the things that they've worked on, because I am a firm believer that when our learners have choice and they get a chance to share their voice with us, they knock it out of the park. They are amazing and creative and wonderful. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking. They're going to pass around some of the things that they have created.
While you are passing those around, I have to say that my husband Frank taught industrial arts at Memorial for 30 years. And to this day, he's still, in fact, he had Mr. Bro, principal for part of his time.
Matter here.
And many times he runs into former students and they always say, I still have the shelf that I made in your class, or I still have this whatever little box or something. So they're very treasured pieces, and it's an awesome course. I'm so glad that you're resurrecting and keeping it going. Oh, nice.
So I kind of want to talk about myself first. So I made this spoon in TI, and it motivated me to make this one with my father. And this one is like a flag map of my favorite country, Lithuania, and I'm very Lithuanian. And yeah. Using a thing called the Glow Forge, I made this. It's like a topographical map of it with the mountains and everything.
Guys, I had a question. Now that you guys are gone from tech ed for the quarter, are you guys able to come back and work in open studio or during your advisories or tutorials at all?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, there's like sometimes we get open studio classes for tutorials and advisories. And you could do whatever you want, because I know some people do, they make posters out of present. And like while other people are working on like the school saw or finishing something.
That's great.
So, and there's so much like materials and notes, honestly, so much safety in TI. That like all of the, like, so when I had TI as a class, every day or like every week, we'd learn about like a couple new machinery, like the machinery and how to use them and specifically how to use them properly. And every day we learn stuff more and more, and by the end we had masterpieces.
Can I make a suggestion? When you make a piece, put your name on the back of it and the year, because later on, sometime you'll come back and you'll say, oh, I made this back in, yeah, take credit for what you did.
I don't know, are you gonna tell them that it's math?
No. Oh, just like.
They're like, what? Bait and switch. I truly appreciate the fact that the young gentleman said, I will use these skills in my future, and that's really the end game, absolutely. Lucy has heard this numerous times, but yes, her husband was my teacher as well at Memorial, and I made a cutting board. And I bought it out, and I used it, and I still have it. I'm mad I didn't bring it tonight, darn it.
Worked 5 years in aerospace, running with engineers, and you wonder why things design so weird. You're talking to somebody that's never changed the oil in the car or built anything. They went to college, but they, they're on computers and doing things that they've never done, but they've done, and it'd be a great asset.
It's a great program. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is our high school reporters, Hayden and Christine.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to be reporting on sports and music today. So throughout January, winter sports teams have been in full swing and the athletes have been working hard. The Unified Sports Team hosted a post-midterm pep rally in the gym on Thursday, January 26th to welcome students into the second semester. Fall sports captains gave a recap of their seasons, while winter sports captains updated the school community on how their seasons have been. The cheerleaders performed and a teacher versus Unified Sports basketball game was held. Furthermore, congratulations to Zach Ryer and Ethan Buffer-Knoyer, who will be traveling to Berlin, Germany for the Special Olympics World Games this June to represent Coggins, Special Olympics Connecticut, and Special Olympics US at the Global Youth Leadership Summit to make the world a more accepting and inclusive space. The Winter Captains Athlete of the Month program has continued to be successful, with January's recipient going to Ryan Newberry from the boys indoor track team. Ryan lowered 2 school records in the indoor 55-meter dash and 200-meter. The boys and girls basketball team are holding their annual peak out games and fundraiser this Friday on February 10th with a doubleheader girls game at 5 p.m. and boys game at 7 p.m. Besides the Blue Devils scoring well in many games, the night home games have been a hit for students, families, friends, and the pep band to cheer on our athletes. The boys and girls indoor track team recently competed at the Shoreline Conference Championships last Friday in New Haven. The girls team placed 3rd out of 12 teams with many new PRs and first place achievements. The boys team successfully defended their title with a back-to-back win in a narrow 2-point lead over Cromwell. Coach Ford was also honored with the Shoreline Coach of the Year 2 years in a row. The boys put up many 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place finishes and scored in every event. Lastly, the Coggins Lyman Hall Swim Co-op has had a 3-meet winning streak and are in line for the SEC Division II championship title. Now on to music. The CRHS Music Department has been busy these past few weeks with the start of Matilda rehearsals underway. Strong and Coggins learners are excited to work together to create an amazing show. The pep band has also been busy cheering on the basketball teams at home games and had an amazing opportunity to perform at the Quinnipiac versus Dartmouth ice hockey game last month. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to student life. This Monday, all of our underclassmen completed course registration for next year's school year. And the senior health classes have been participating in Hartford Healthcare's Brain Dance Award. This competition encourages students to create an academic or an artistic project that looks at mental health through the lens of decreasing the stigma. So Coggin students in the past have had much success in making music, pieces of art, films, and have gotten placed in the top 3 in the previous years. So this year, many of us are working on songs right now to turn them into brain dance for this Friday's deadline. Robotics team 8167, led by Mrs. Walsh and Dr. Tabor, is meeting 3 times a week, designing, building, wiring, and coding a new robot for this season's challenge. This year's game is to pick and place. It's a pick and place style game where the robot must pick up a cone or an inflatable cube and place it on a target pole or shelf. The first competition is in Waterbury and it's on March 11th and 12th. We also have an open studio up at the high school. It's led by Mrs. Walsh and Mr. Bothamley. And this program focuses on creating an opportunity for all learners to create a project-based learning environment in both tech and art. With Mrs. Walsh, the students have been sewing pajamas, bookmarks, reusable bags, cutlery, place settings, aprons, and are working on heart pillows to donate to the Yale Smiley Breast Cancer Center. With Mr. Bothamley, students have been developing skills in areas such as interdisciplinary collaboration, observational drawing, painting, ceramics, stained glass design, sculpture, college art portfolio development, and the students will gain proficiency through research, learning the studio best practices, and participating in visual arts critiques. This is a great opportunity for our learners to access hands-on experience that will apply to all life applications. Students also have the opportunity to learn about various career paths through over 20 guest speakers visiting throughout the next few months. Organized by Mr. Thompson, the Lunch and Learn series has featured careers in accounting, hospitality, manufacturing, and IT. Lastly, Project Graduation has started their annual raffle selling tickets for their March raffle. 100% of the profits go to help provide an all-night substance-free party for Coggin seniors on their graduation night. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Mr. Moore, do you have a question for both of them?
Well, I
Yes,
just wanted to say, I know that Christine hasn't heard college, but Aiden, have you?
Yeah, I'm going to be going to Brown next year.
Congratulations.
Speaking of college, you gonna follow him to Brown too? How about the Congratulations.
Can you also tell them
What
the
else
three,
did you win it?
the 3 events that you did
Oh, yeah.
Friday night?
I did on the 1,000 meters, 1,600 and 3,200.
And you placed in all of them
Yeah.
on the same night. Wow.
Wow.
Great job. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. At the beginning of the meeting, public comments should refer to items on the agenda. Our first public comment is for in-person public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Drea and I live in Rockfall, Connecticut. I'm here tonight to talk about the racism that happens in RSD13 schools and the racist things that were done to me in living them. First, let's get this out of the way. Some of you may be seeing me for the first time and be thinking, wow, she doesn't look black. What's the big deal? But just like you may not look Irish or Italian, but you're still proud of it, I'm proud of being black. It's part of who I am. And deciding if someone is too black or not black enough is called colorism, a form of racism. There's a really good episode from Blackish about it. You can probably watch it on Hulu. And even if you think I'm not black enough to be hurt by racism, I want to make sure you remember. Last year, I was black enough for boys at school to hate me. I was black enough for them to show me the Confederate flag, call me an ugly bleep N-word on social media, and on Valentine's Day, they hated me so much that they brought a black baby doll into the lunchroom. In front of all my friends and teachers, they called the baby doll by my name, ripped its clothes, arms, and legs off, beat it, and then they tried to give me the black baby doll they were pretending to kill. That's how much they hated me and wanted to hurt me because I was black. The racism has to stop, and you need to do something real about it. When you do nothing, it scares and hurts us and makes us feel like we don't matter. When I think about it, I think I'm sorry for a lot of things that happened since then.
I'm sorry it scared my mom and dad so much. I'm sorry it forced me not to be able to go to school with my friends anymore, go to socials with them, graduate from 8th grade and high school with them. But mostly I'm sorry for not coming to talk to you sooner and beg that you do something to stop racism and hate in RSD13 schools. I know I don't go to school here anymore, but some of my friends who are kids of color and mixed race do. And I'm sorry it took me so long to come here to try and help and protect them. My mom says that when things are hard, you have to look for the silver linings or what you can learn from it. So I thought about it and I wanted to tell you what I've learned. I have learned that you don't need to keep going to a place that makes you feel sad, scared, or not safe. You just don't. It doesn't matter where it is. You should always feel safe. I learned that even though it doesn't always feel like it, that I'm stronger than I think I am. Next, I learned that you have the right to stand up for yourself when you want to, but you must always stand up for other people, especially when no one else is. I also learned that forgiving people makes it easier to feel better. So I forgave the kids at school that did this to me, and now I forgive you. I forgive you for not caring enough about kids like me to do anything and for not having enough courage. Fighting racism is hard, trust me, I know. But I also know that my parents tell me you have to welcome people and give them a chance to be better when they decide they're ready. So whenever you decide you are ready to be better, just let me know and we can work together to fight racism. And even though RSD13 isn't where I go to school anymore, I still live here. And I will never stop working to make it better. And I want you to join me when you're ready. While you decide if you are ready to work toward fighting racism, I thought I'd give you ideas of what you might start with. I know that you were talking about your equity and non-discrimination policies tonight. I think you should also have a policy that makes it against the rules for students to wear or bring hate symbols like the Confederate flag to school, and you should describe how you will punish kids who use hate speech and racial slurs. I know some of you may think that punishing kids who use hate speech or racial slurs may not help them learn how to be better, and I agree with that. But I also know when kids are punished for things, they usually stop. And kids of color also need to be protected, and banning these things and punishing kids for breaking the rules is a good start. As I finish talking tonight, I want to say thank you to all the kids at the high school, all the high school kids at Coggins who took a stand for me. It really helped to know that you were standing up for me when the grown-ups did. It still means a lot. I hope you think about what I learned since last year and hope you'll learn from it to do better. Please care enough and have the courage to help kids of color in RSD13 because we deserve it and we do not.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak that is here? Anyone else? Thank you. Is there anyone online? No one has their hands up. Okay. We'll move on to item number 5, approval of minutes. We need a motion to approve the minutes of the January 11th, 2023 board meeting. So it's moved by Lindsay, second by Amanda. Any discussion, any corrections? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Okay. We're going to go to item number 6, which is the superintendent's report. The first part of that is the budget proposal for 2023-2024.
Thank you. And if you give us about a minute or two, Kim and I are going to move to that side of the table because we're going to project up on the screen. We won't be blocking anywhere and also we can see slides.
Share the screen.
Okay.
I have to share the slides with my screen.
Seems to be connecting. Okay, well, a little different sitting over here, but same me, same Kim. Thank you, board members, and Lucy, for giving us this time this evening. I also want to thank Kim Newbig. People don't know Kim. Her staff and also our entire leadership team, many of whom are with us tonight, for the hard work to get us to this place. Board members, you should have received earlier today a digital copy of the budget details, and I believe we have hard copies here tonight. Is there anyone that, board members, that did not get their hard copy? Because I see a few more up there. Well, if not, you can, and you don't want one, right? Oh, no, you too. Change your mind?
I did.
Okay. So the way we structured the agenda tonight in meeting with your board leadership is that you're going to get the budget presented tonight, but because you just received it, and because we have other agenda items, we didn't build in time for questions or discussions or reactions. You may have them, but I would actually say spend a little time with it if you would please. And we'll be right back here in this room in 2 weeks to have our first budget work session. And we'll also talk about some other opportunities to get questions answered between now and then. And I will do that at the end. So diving right into the slides, we're talking about 23, 24, but if the visual makes sense to you, and hopefully it does, let's get rid of that guy. We feel like we have one really effective long-term strategy, and this comes as no surprise to any members of the board. But I think it's important to state, because I think as a staff and as a board, we've kind of all agreed that our annual budgets are going to continue to challenge us until we're able to deal with our facility planning. And the plan that we have all collectively proposed is expanding and renovating Memorial School to serve all of our learners in grades K to 5. And, you know, this is important educationally, and it's also important fiscally. It aligns with our vision for learner-centered education, things that are in our strategic plan. Regardless of where we're going educationally, it limits transitions for learners. They only have to attend 3 schools under this plan: Memorial, Strong, and Coggins-Chog, unlike the 4 that they have to do now. It also unifies our district. There's been a lot of talk long before I got here a couple of years ago about a divided district around some issues of how we were structured, and this will further unify our district. And maybe this is important to some people, and maybe it's not, but it also will balance experiences for our learners under this plan for time that they would spend in Durham and Middlefield. And I think that is important to a lot of people. At least that's what I've heard from a lot of you and from a lot of other folks. On the fiscal side, in addition to all those educational benefits, this will greatly reduce our operational costs. It will improve our efficiency and the way we're able to serve all of our learners, but specifically those in grades K-5. It does require an upfront investment, but it also should qualify under the current rules for a state reimbursement of 52% of the project. And the way that I view that, you may or you may not, is that those are allocated dollars that taxpayers in Durham and Middlefield have paid over the years into that fund, and we have access to those funds. And if we don't, then some other towns get to access them. And again, I'm not going to stay here to be an agenda item right after this one, where we're going to get into this topic a little bit more, but I do think it's important to ground the budget discussion around this because it is so important. So what is really impacting the upcoming budget? Again, I don't think there are any surprises here. That one word that I learned a little bit about when I was in school, and maybe a little bit more in college and as a citizen. But, you know, to put it more specifically, and again, I'm not an economist, but the consumer price index is probably the most recognizable indicator in this country of inflation. Things like I don't know, maybe some of you get social security checks. I don't want to judge ages here. I'm not going to say anything about Kevin, I promise, but you know, that ties to this index, and it's an index of what things cost. And so just to kind of show you where we've been in the last 3 years, that really is what is challenging us. And it challenges us in two ways. I really believe this is a double-edged sword. So from the budget that you receive, the expenditures that we have to pay to serve our learners daily, that is significantly impacted by inflationary pressures that we don't control. Kim will unpack that a little bit more in a few slides from this. But the other side of that coin is it also challenges our citizens and our taxpayers, because they have those same inflationary pressures in what they pay for electricity and heating oil and gasoline and food and eggs and a whole bunch of other things. And so this is where we I think have to keep both of those things in mind. So before I hand things over to Kim for the next set of slides, just to kind of summarize at a very 30,000 foot level, what's happening in this budget as we propose it is it does maintain all of our current programming, and I think that's important. It also aligns with our strategic plan, and we'll share a little bit more about that later and where we hope to go as a district. It also recognizes two things. One I've already mentioned is this kind of, I don't want to use the term runaway inflation, because I do feel like the Federal Reserve has taken actions that are starting to bring inflation more under control, but that will still take time for us to see the impact of that. But it also recognizes the declining enrollment that we've had over a number of years that you all have seen in detail when we had the presentation several months ago. So at this point, I am going to turn the laptop and the slides over to Kim.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first slide here is the increase in the budget from 22-23 to 23-24. The gross budget proposed increase is 4.59%, and the net budget increase is 5.35. I'll go into the difference between those in a couple minutes, but I want to break down the 4.59. That 4.59 is primarily made up of the biggest impactors is salaries and benefits. So that's 1.07% of the budget increase. Operating services is 2.05%. Capital and debt is 0.58, and everything else is 0.89. So obviously the biggest impact on the budget is typically every year salaries and benefits, but this year we're really seeing an increase in operating services too. And that I will break down that a little bit further too. We get to the 5.35 because the gross total expenditures of the 39 million are offset by any kind of revenue that a regional district can receive. And we do receive some revenue, and that's netted off what the towns will pay. However, our revenue is down from last year by 0.76%. And that increases the amount that the towns would pay from last year. And that revenue is in a couple different areas, but a lot of it is to do with outside tuition is down. And we'll go through that again in more depth. You'll see this slide, which I think was a great visual, because when I said we're seeing an operating services increase, I'm not kidding. That's the biggest driver. Operating services. The next we have is benefits. Sometimes we lump salaries and benefits together, but for this purpose, I wanted to show you how benefits outweigh salaries even, and supplies. So those are the top three areas. Salaries and benefits together make up 72% of our total budget. Salaries are budgeted at a vacancy factor of 96.5%. So that allows for attrition, that allows for leaves for staff members that are then we pay a substitute. So it's not often we pay 100% of our salary. Sometimes we have to pay more. But this is a budgeting strategy that the board has used since I've been here, and it gets close, but we've been able to sustain at the 96.5. Health insurance has also been budgeted at a 10% renewal rate. We were at the state partnership plan. We went there last year, if you'll recall. And they're indicating an 8 to 10% increase, budgeted at 10, just in case. So that's results of $405,000 for salaries and benefits out of the total budget increase. The difference in the salaries really are contractual obligations. And really are not the biggest driver. You know, obviously you can see benefits is actually a higher driver. In benefits also, it's not just health insurance and benefits, which I think sometimes I forget to explain. In there, we have our actuarially determined pension contribution that we make every year to our pension plan. And we're proud of the fact that it's funded at 87%, because there are a lot of places that are not funded even close to that. So we commit to making that payment every single year. And that went up 7,000. And that depends on mortality tables and number of retirees and all that. It's a moving formula. So that's incorporated in there. Also, workers' comp insurance increased this year. And also every year, this is not an increase from last year, but every year in this line item is contractual course reimbursements. So when staff members go and get advanced degrees or take courses, they get course reimbursements. And that's in their contract, and we budget for that in there every year. It's the same amount every year, but I just wanted you to know that that number is in there too. It's not just health insurance in that account. Operating services, I just wanted to unpack that a little bit and break that down. That's an increase of $776,000 over last year. That's the 2.05%. So that's almost half of the increase in this year's budget. We have seen a significant increase in tuition and transportation to state certified special education programs, VOAG schools, and magnet schools. We have 3 new students in this year, 22 of 23. So we had to budget for that for 23-24. So that is part of our increase. We do have a special education excess cost grant that we do budget for under revenue. That's the $546,000 we budgeted for. We don't always get the amount that we hope, but that does help to offset some of these expenditures. It's just not shown in that bar graph because it's on the revenue side by accounting principles where we have to record it. Also in operating services, we have our DECO contract. We have diesel prices have gone up, as you all know. We have some increases in property and liability insurance, and we have an increase in our repayment for our energy lease based on the payment schedule, not unexpected at all. We knew that that was coming. The last area I want to highlight is the supplies. Supplies are an increase of $257,000, and that's primarily to inflation. And inflation is not just of the actual supplies. We did do a kind of across the district cut in supplies that were requested by the administration. And even with that, we were able to manage the inflations somewhat, but we did have to cut some supplies funds. We did not cut in facilities and grounds because those are the things that's like heating fuel, electricity, things that we simply could not cut. The district does participate in a fuel consortium. We locked in our prices on Monday, and as of today, they were up 12 cents a gallon. So we locked in, like, we had to get it out in about half hour, and we did, and we locked in a really good rate. We locked in at $3.10 a gallon for heating oil. So that was I was happy with that because I originally was thinking it's over $4. Our biggest here also is electricity. We're estimating a 40% increase just in our electricity. We do have a generation side and we have a supply side. We do contract with a company, and we've had outside of Eversource. We do have Eversource too, but we've contracted with them over the few years, and they've really come in with lower rates for us. But with everything, with the natural gas and with the unrest and even their prices are going up. So we based this on estimated prices and past usage, best we could. And then we've also implemented strategies to try to get these prices down. So, what we did was we had some energy upgrades. We did an energy audit, and I spoke about an energy lease. We did that a couple of years ago. So we updated a lot of our equipment. We have light sensors, as you know, that go off in the middle of the meetings. We've upgraded our building management systems. And we've also made adjustments in our temperature set points in all the buildings. And so actually spoke to this slide, the salaries and benefits, operating services, fuel supply, the decrease in the revenue I spoke to, and then the other thing was the district-wide capital needs. And that's the increases in here. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but right now, some of the mitigation strategies for the salaries line was again to budget the salaries at 96.5%. And then with the most recent ratification of the teachers contract, cooperation between the board and the teachers union, we were able to ratify a very responsible contract, which actually helped us reduce and eliminate overages of teachers, staffs, loads, teaching loads. And then also this budget does reflect some reduced staffing levels. Capital reserve highlights. This is always my favorite. Capital reserve is actually this budget proposal fully funds capital reserve a total 2% state statute. As the budget goes up, the net budget, the amount you can put towards goes up, right? So 2% of a higher amount is higher than 2% of a lower amount. So the more you increase capital, the more you can increase capital. So it's kind of you have to call it somewhere. So I fully funded 2% of 39 million, which was $778,000. Capital also includes equipment. So in there is some equipment we have needed in the district, such as a new dishwasher, a Coggin-Chog. We need basketball shot clocks, or CIAC required now. Outdoor track high jumps, some defibrillators, some keyboards at Coggin-Chog, and some new software. But from that, I want to talk about the capital reserve highlights a little bit more. And the first would be Picket Lane paving. And as you recall, significant work has been done on both ends of Picket Lane the last summer. And this phase is to finish the paving sort of in between and then out to Maiden Lane past the culvert. This phase does not include drainage or sidewalks. It's just finishing up the paving. And the building committee has been very active in this space and has been very supportive. And has actually been very helpful in getting us to get the price down. We're estimating the cost of this to be $600,000, but we do have the opportunity to reallocate some of the culvert grant funds to the paving at Picket Lane, which then we would only save for, I don't think I have the amounts on there, but I had only put in for $300,000 for Picket Lane in this $778,000. The second thing on there is HVAC at Strong. So this is sort of a new thing that we haven't really talked much about, but we did get some new boilers there through the gas-fired boilers, through the bonding project, and also when the natural gas line came on. So they're working great, but what is happening is our chiller and our chill pumps that are 27 years old with a 20-year lifespan installed in 1996, they're showing a signs of age, right? And they're failing. And this runs the glycol through the system, through the schools in the summer. And, you know, we lost a chiller here last year. And so now it was $250,000 and we, you know, anticipate this one to fail very soon as well. So there's funds in there to save for that. Let's see where my chart is here. Tell you how much. Yep. Chiller 243,000. That doesn't even cover it. The total estimate is 385. But at least if we can get some savings in there for this year, and then again the next year, we might get another year out of that. Turf replacement is another area that the building committee has been very active in with us, and we have almost fully funded it. However, the amount that we were working on to fund it was 7, 8, maybe 10 years ago. So the updated pricing obviously is an increase over what we expected or what we had saved. So that's in the neighborhood of $80,000. So I put in $80,000 for that. Now what that will do is that will allow us to either finish the project or do the project in the summer of 2023, which our turf has been said to be, it is at end of useful life. We think we might be able to get another year out of it if we had to. So what we would like to do is pay a deposit to the vendor to kind of buy us a slot in the schedule, and then do the project in 2024. So, you know, we'd be putting this 80,000 in there of the 778 to help us to be able to do that in 2024. Indoor air variable frequency drives. I'm going to read what that is. These drives are crucial to the indoor air quality as they regulate air handler motor speeds. Without them, motors fail prematurely and need multiple repairs. Over the past 12 months, we have replaced 4 of the 30 drives at the high school. These drives are past the end of their useful life and commonly fail, given their age. The cost of each drive is $5,000. We have been funding this through unanticipated buildings and repairs, and we've been replacing one at a time. We actually would like more than this number of drives, but had to work within that number that we could put these drives in and then not have to worry about them failing and replacing the onesie here and there. And then again, next year, we'll ask for some more until we're on a regular routine of replacing them when they're at their end of their life, instead of waiting for them to fail. And then obviously unanticipated repairs and maintenance, funded at 100,000 again this year, or proposed to be, because we still have Lyman School that we may have an unexpected repair. We may have that chiller at Strong that we've only, if we save the 243 and it comes in at 385, we need to make that up somewhere. So we still have enough. If we don't pay Picket Lane, we have to patch those potholes. So there's still things that we need to save the funds for in the 100,000 in the building maintenance. So I did fully ask for that to be funded at 100,000. So all that adds up to 778,000, and the detail is in your book too. The next point is the debt service. You'll see from this graph that debt service does fall off at the end of 24-25, fall down, not necessarily fall off, but those high, and actually I think 22-23 is in there too. Yeah, but so those 3 years there are really just is the existing debt from various improvements at the pools, wells, roofs, things like that, but also the 6.9 million bonding that we did back that we got back in May. And you'll see that the old debt falls off at 24-25, and then now we just have the 6.9 million, and we're going to go down. The important part of this graph is to see that if you level fund the debt service where the 2025 to the 2025-26, where it falls, if you don't drop the budget by that amount, but you funded that amount, then you can bond money to pay for projects and not increase the budget in this line item. So that's important to note, because when you do a project and you issue a bond and you get, whether you get approval, it doesn't impact your budget until the next year. So we have time to do some, and this comes into play with if there's going to be any kind of Memorial K-5 expansion, that there is this ability for us to level fund this debt service and use that to bond and not increase the debt service line. Hope that was clear. This is just a snapshot of the budget history that's in all your books, and we just update this every year. Not much to say there. This slide is our per pupil expenditure history, and our most recent audited number was 21-22. We were audited by this, not audited by the state, but the state audits it to make sure it's accurate. And it was $25,622 per student. That's an increase of $1,130 over the year before. Using this same methodology that the state formula, and I do that with anticipated numbers and with budgeted numbers, and also incorporating the enrollment projections. I've anticipated 22-23 to be $26,188, an increase of $566. But then 23-24 with this budget proposal, I anticipate it to be $27,807, or an increase of $1,619. The only way this number is going to fall is significant expenditure reductions. And I'm talking reductions in the millions of dollars. And town allocations, this slide I prepared before the governor's budget proposal today. However, it didn't change that much. The proposed ECS number is a little bit higher than I have here. But that's still proposed, so that has not passed yet. But so the town allocations are based on a 4.59% gross number and a net of 5.35. Remember, towns pay on net, so it's 38 million. Durham had an increase in population of a 0.15, and Middlefield experienced a reduction of a 0.15, kind of insignificant, but does matter. And then with the ECS 24 phase-in plan. The net cost to Durham is 21 million and to Middlefield is 11. To compare that to 22-23, the increase from 22-23 is 1,307,000 for Durham and 593,000 for Middlefield. Again, I said those numbers are a little bit different because the governor did just in his proposal increase by his ECS by another 25,000 for Durham and another 28 for Middlefield. So that if that passes, those numbers will be lower.
Back to me. Okay, thank you, Kim. So I mentioned before about trying to be aligned with our strategic plan in this budget. So I want to let you know about some things that maybe you know about these things anyway, but this is a great time to share them. You know, the first thing is that we really are transforming professional learning in RSD 13, and that came together out of a combination of the calendar we just approved, the bargaining agreement we just approved, this proposed budget, and all in support of personalized, relevant, and job-embedded professional learning. And what this is doing is it is shifting funds that we have historically paid to a handful of consultants and redirecting those funds to individual teachers to use in their professional development planning if they choose to do that. And we're very excited about this because it's one thing to say it's personalized and they have some choice. It's another thing to back that up with some actual funding that they could actually apply to that. And I really appreciate our partnership with our teacher union and others, many of you in crafting this. We also believe that wherever we go in learner-centered education, and in everybody that I've talked to who's done this work, and even some of the work that I've done myself, professional learning is the absolute first and most important necessary first step, because some of our teachers are chomping at the bit to jump into this work and others are scared to death of it. And we need to meet those folks where they are and help them be ready for this. We also are in the development of a competency-based framework, and that may not mean a whole lot to you. Hopefully it will once we finish it. Just as a reminder, we have 4 domains in the strategic plan: academics, obviously, kind of our bread and butter, but also employability, citizenship, and wellness. And we are anticipating this framework being done by the summer, at the very latest, as I'm told, and that then, along with the professional learning, become the 2 major anchor points for everything else that we hope to do. But that's not really all we're doing and all that we will be doing. We're also developing learner profiles, and we're very close to completion for those for all but our very youngest learners. We're still not exactly sure for the very youngest what that actually looks like, because being able to read and understand and input some of the forms is important. But we do plan to implement on some scale those learner profiles next school year. We also are in development, and I think within the next few months, we'll be very close to rolling out these learner-centered mini sessions. I know some of you got the newsletter, so you've read in more detail that I'm going into tonight. But you know, the idea behind these mini sessions is to say we have a large segment of our families, even though we've gone to all of our employees now, our families, our community, our taxpayers, who really don't even know what we're talking about in some of this work. And they're not going to give us a whole day, and they're not going to give us half a day. And some of you might even fall into this category. And so we're designing something that right now looks like a 30 to 45 minute, not necessarily just presentation, but a presentation / discussion that we feel like we could unpack at PTA meetings, PTO meetings, but also if they would have us, Chamber of Commerce and other community organizations that already exist and would invite us in to do that work. We're also in the process of reaching out to a number of schools around the world in an attempt to establish and build partnerships, between classrooms or entire schools or different elements of our learner population, that, expand the horizons beyond the walls of our schools, but not just that, beyond kind of our local communities. In addition to that, there are some school level things that are in the works that align with our strategic plan. At the high school, there are a number that I just want to highlight and mention. One is a redesigned advisory that we would kick off next fall with the upcoming 9th grade, that if it were successful could become the model going forward. We also need to refine the capstone program. Currently, the capstone program is targeted and they start in their senior year. We want to back that work up into the 11th grade year so that they have multiple years to work on that and don't just jump into that their senior year. Along with that, we're really ratcheting up and expanding opportunities for internships, job shadows, tours of environments. You heard some of that tonight in the presentation from Christine, but we want to take that to the next level next school year. And something else that's exciting is that we are going to be increasing our access to those that are interested to college course offerings. My understanding is we have signed a new partnership to offer courses through Southern and also more through the community college system, which if you didn't know, they used to be independent community colleges and now it's one statewide system. And that's on top of the things that we are already offering. So that's very exciting for the high school. Elementary literacy program. I don't want to talk a lot about that because that's also agenda item for tonight. I'll talk about that a little bit more there, but we're exploring that. We're not committed to it at this point, but we're very interested in doing that because we need something. But the other thing I want to point out and make sure if it didn't come out in the last presentation is that the programming that we are considering is also aligned with our vision for learner-centered education. So it isn't just another program and a better program that meets the state's definition of the science of reading and what we think is best for our learners, but it also aligns with our vision and other elements of our plan. Something that we have heard loudly from a number of you and from others is the need to increase learning opportunities at Strong Middle School. This was originally on this slide as reducing or eliminating tutorials, and that's kind of what it is. But I think that's the negative way of stating it. And I think we had some great examples tonight from our Strong presenters of we just need to offer more at Strong, and we are going to. And so that's a priority for not just the district, but for the staff and leadership at Strong. And then we've talked several months ago when Rob was here of our commitment to expanding unified sports activities to all of our schools. And so we're excited to be able to plan that for next year. Some other noteworthy things. These are all, this last slide is all things at the state level. And you can Google these bill numbers if you want to get into the details on it. The first one I think is very positive if it happens, House Bill 5003. This would shore up the ECS funding. Now, again, that funding, if you're not familiar with our budget, does not come directly to the districts. It comes to the towns on behalf of the district. So it is very helpful because it lowers the burden to the town budgets and therefore to the taxpayers. And this bill, if it makes it through, would kind of hold harmless where we are and actually add funding. So that's the positive. Senate Bill 929 is in my understanding, something that I would call a well-intentioned bill that also adds an unfunded mandate to localities. So it would challenge us if it were to get through. And this would be a bill that would require us to provide free lunch And of course, the federal government would reimburse for those who qualified, but the district and the towns would be on the hook for that for everybody else. So, if you have any influence in Hartford, you may want to speak positively about the first one and maybe ask for a different version of the second one. I think it's also important to know that at the state level, there is some language that if it were able to get through would assist in funding with lights for our stadium and also restrooms for the field house that we're in the process of designing and will hopefully be built soon. And I mention that not because we really can't influence that per se. Again, if you have influence with those folks, please do it. But to say that I know those either were on the board last year and some of us may have taken a little flack in some parts of the community for locally funding that, but that project being funded at that level opens up the doorway potentially for a lot more state funding to flow our way. And I just think it's important to recognize that and to know that we could do that. And the last thing I'll just mention, Kim already mentioned it, is that Governor Lamont's budget was just put out this afternoon. And so we didn't have time to reflect any of that in what you are seeing here, but we certainly will to the best we can by the time of our next work session. And speaking of that, I want to talk about kind of the next steps. Again, we didn't build in time for questions or discussion tonight, but we are creating a Google Doc that we've been on the board for a while. This is not anything new. And if you're willing, we would ask that you would put your questions in the Google Doc so that every board member can see the questions from other board members. This actually helps us, Kim especially, in case there are duplicate questions, and so she can kind of combine them, but also see the answers. And we can also answer those and will, to the extent requested, at the upcoming work sessions. But it means you don't have to wait for 2 weeks. And it also means that the work sessions can be more productive because we come in and you all come in kind of knowing not just what your questions are, but what the questions of others are. And I can't take credit for that. You guys have been doing that for a while, and I think it's a great idea. We do have 3 budget work sessions that are on the calendar: February 22nd, March 1st, March 22nd. We're making a deliberate effort in this season to not try to combine regular board meetings with budget work sessions. I think it's been very helpful in the past. We've been able to just come in and only focus on budget. And so that's what happened on those 3 dates. If we need all of them, again, we're going to hit it hard starting on February 22nd. And it's our request as a staff. It's obviously deferred to the board, and we'll be planning this with your board officers here in the next couple of days, that the February 22nd would have a staffing focus. Kim mentioned that there are staffing reductions in this proposal. We didn't go into the details of that because we want to make sure we can share that with you to see if you support what we've proposed, but also to see if there are other areas of staffing that you may wish us to revisit, either restoring some of what we may have proposed for reductions or looking at other areas. And we want to be prepared to do that. That's not the only work session that we can talk about staffing, but one of the reasons why I want to hit that hard early on is that we don't know yet what your reaction to the overall budget level is going to be. And only you kind of know that individually, and even collectively, you haven't had the chance to talk about that. But if you don't believe that that staffing level is where it needs to be, and specifically if you think that it needs to be lower, based on what Kim shared earlier, the only practical way to lower that number significantly is through additional staffing reductions, even beyond what we have proposed. And if you all recall from our retreat, I think we talked about it there, 2 topics that we would like to get in front of you specifically on that evening are the class sizes at the high school, which you already have some data on that, but Deb and Katie have worked really hard on some presentation materials for that evening, if you all are interested in that. And I think it's very important to kind of understand that and to give us some direction in terms of where we might go with that educationally, but also as it pertains to the budget. And there were also some citizens who had asked questions about how we use coaches and interventionists and folks that are not like regular classroom teachers. And so we want to share with you kind of how that's been done historically and how it's currently being done. And then you all have asked for a lot of information about job descriptions and org charts and all of those things. And so you may have questions and thoughts about things related to staffing. And I think that will take the whole work session on the 22nd. Because it's such a big topic. But the other reason why I would like to do this, if possible, is if we have to do any staffing reductions, and I don't see any way that we won't, I just don't. Again, you all ultimately make that decision. And if some of those go into what we ultimately put in front of the voters in April, in a public hearing and then in a referendum in May, it would be great to allow Kevin to start notifying staff who could potentially be impacted by those reductions in terms of reduction of force, to allow those employees to, first of all, know that, because there's a lot of nuances to certifications and reduction in force policies, but to also make some planning. One of the criticisms we all got collectively last year when the budget failed was that we made so many staff reductions so late in the process. And I heard that and I owned that. And I'm sure you all are owning it with us, those of you that were on the board and on the staff, and that still may happen. You know, the voters may still reject whatever the board ultimately puts out there, and we still could decrease from there. But I would just like it not to be as many reductions that late in the cycle, in fairness to our employees, to allow them, those that might be impacted, to consider their options moving forward. We also have the public hearing, as I just referenced, on April 5th, and that would line us up for our May referendum. So thank you for your patience. That was a lot of talking by both of us. We tried to do that as quickly as we could. These slides were shared with you. And again, the budget was as well. So I think now we're going to move back to our other seats and move on to two other really interesting topics. 30 seconds.
Peter, did you want a copy?
Please, thank you.
Okay, could you pass this?
Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. Well, I'm good.
Thank you, sir.
And I just would give my. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we'll give Kim just a second. Okay, so
An hour.
thank you again for your patience with that presentation, and Kim, thank you again for all your hard work on that. So the next topic, which I know is one of great interest, has to do with the proposed expansion and renovation of Memorial. And, you know, I want to really give Kim and then also Lucy and Lindsay credit, as we talked about the beginning of a communication sequence around this. And especially once we learned that we weren't going to get good numbers on this, probably until the end of this month, around the 1st of March from Silver Petroselli, that we didn't want to wait with this conversation kind of going public with the community until then. So, you know, for better or worse, we put out some information. I know that there are Academy Awards being handed out, but I thought Lucy and I did our best to have a conversation and put that out in the community. And then we did this thought exchange, and the thought exchange is still going on for about another week. But I wanted to let you know some things about that based on the information that has come in. And the first is, I think the participation has been great. I'd love it to be a lot more. So to the extent that you can talk to other people about participating, we've had 170 participants share 101 thoughts and a total of 3,335 ratings. And that's pretty high on a thought exchange. So people are participating. And I think what is most revealing to me, and again, we'll get you the final data once this thing has totally run its course, is that the top thoughts are actually not thoughts, they are questions. And that is very, very good. And it may surprise you or it may not. And, you know, maybe I wasn't clear. I thought I was. And I think Lucy was too, that we said we don't have the costs yet and we won't. But would it surprise you to know that the top thought question was, what is the time frame for this plan and what will the cost be? The second thought was, what is the cost of this versus leaving it the way it is. The next one is, what about Lyman and Brewster becoming vacant? The next one is, need to share estimated building expansion renovation costs and timeline. The next one, I'm interested to hear more about how Brewster will be repurposed and what would be needed at Memorial School to accommodate all students. K-5. The next one, will the towns get to vote on this? The next one, how much will this cost? So I'm not going to go down the whole list, but that's the top grouping. Okay, so I think that's why I'm saying kudos to our board members that kind of consulted on this, and also Kim, you know, in saying, let's get this out there now, because people are asking questions, and this is the point. We want those questions to come in so that we can give those answers and that they're ready to hear those answers. The other piece, which is probably the reason most of all this is on tonight's agenda, is, and we put this in the email that we sent you, but when Kim and myself met with Lucy and Lindsay to kind of talk about all of this, we believe, and again, I don't want to speak for any of them if they've changed their mind at this point, or any of you, that this is a very good plan, and our best opportunity to get a bonding referendum approved would be to get it on the May referendum, when we're already doing our referendum for our budget. And if that is to happen, we got to get rolling on this. We have to get rolling communicating, but there's also a lot of technical things that need to be done. And so I want to make sure that you all are okay with that. It doesn't require a vote tonight, but I'd like the minutes to at least reflect a board consensus on that being an aim point. And there's two reasons why I believe we should do that. Maybe there's a third, actually. We do pay for referendums, so it doesn't cost us any more to add that question. So there is some budget savings to the district for doing it in May. It's also our first practical opportunity. And I believe, I'd like to think this referendum will be successful, but in the case that it isn't, we have other opportunities to bring that in front of the voters again, because if you recall, we have until November to get this passed, to get our bonding application successfully approved by the state. And so again, I'm going to be very glass half full positive and say we're going to get this thing approved on the first ballot, but if it doesn't, maybe we're going to hear from people, why didn't it pass? Why didn't you vote for it? Why didn't you vote? You know, all of those things. And then, you know, after a period of time, come back on it. And so that's kind of my thought on it. The other thing I think that is important, because several of you have reached out and asked this, and we just got this information, what, like 2 hours ago? This is really interesting, and I don't want to make it too complex, but those of you that have been at this will understand it. There has been a question raised. Can we go out and bond for an expansion renovation of Memorial School without first having a successful amendment to the regionalization plan for Regional School District 13, as we have tried in the past? The answer to that question is we do not need to amend the regionalization plan to go out for this bonding and to do this project. So I think that is very, very good and promising news. Now, it isn't the whole story, so I got to tell you the whole story. What we need the public's permission for initially is to borrow the money to do the project. And I think we need to be very direct with people, as we have been already with our communications, of this consolidation plan, which would involve also closing schools, and that's how we're saving all the money, okay? But we do not need the citizens' permission to execute this plan on the front end. What we will need to do down the road is, once this project is completed, if we wish to close Brewster, which is at this point, I think, a question whether we would or we wouldn't. We talked about repurposing or possibly closing. That would require an amendment to the plan of regionalization. We would not need an amendment to close Lyman at that point. And the reason is the plan of regionalization specifies an elementary school in each town. So clearly, if we have a K-5 Memorial School in the town of Middlefield, that decision would be made for us. So I think this is very positive news. We didn't know what we were going to hear until like literally 2 hours ago. And so, wanted to make sure we shared that. And before we go to questions or even board discussion, I'd like Kim to briefly share the timeline of what it would take to get us from this moment tonight, if you guys are good with this, to that May referendum question.
So it will be a tight turnaround, because we're not getting the figures until the end of February. The month of March would hit the ground running, and that would be where you would hold informational sessions. We would have drawings and designs, and the architect would come out and speak to the drawings, and we'd have the prices, and we'd have how much we would have to bond for, what that debt service would look like, all of that stuff. And that would essentially be the entire month of March. Because come April 1st, or actually March 29th, we would want to have a public hearing. Because once you have a public hearing and then you have a district meeting immediately after that, special board meeting, you send it to referendum. Because you have to have it for 30 days. And then you're quiet. We can't say another word other than just the facts. And they're very watered down, because you can't, imply either way to vote. So it would be a very intense month of March, but we could still get it on the referendum for May with that. With that, we would, if it failed, clock starts over. So then you can start advocating again, you can change the plan, you can change whatever you want to do. You have to go through a series of informational sessions again, you'd have another public hearing, you'd have another referendum. And if that fails, it starts over again. So between then and November 15th, you probably have the option of 3, maybe 4 potential referendums at probably $15,000 each. But it can be done. And the problem with a municipal election in November, there's additional rules. There's an additional lockout time because it's a municipal election. So if we were to get that close to the municipal election, we'd have to kind of, work around those dates a little bit. But we have until November 15th to get it to the school. So I would apply for the grant by the end of June. We would know if we had funding by November, and then we'd be able to proceed from there if the funding was in place and the referendum passes. If we don't get the project in for June, which this should not prevent us from, the referendum date will not prevent us from doing that. But if we should miss that because we can't come to, because to send it to a referendum and even to a public hearing, we have to have a specific project and a specific price tag. We can't send an option A and an option B. We have to tell the public exactly what it's for. If we can't come to that consensus, that could push us up another year.
Thank you.
So the question you want to put to the board for feedback is having a referendum in May to approve.
Yeah.
To approve the bonding amount.
Yeah, is that
thoughts?
a prudent course of action? Is it too aggressive? Is it too quick? Is it too much to do on top of budget? Again, this is what the 4 of us kind of had in our heads, but this is your first chance with the rest of the board and with us to really kind of weigh in on this.
What if we don't think we can afford it?
What's that?
What if we don't think we can afford it? We want to wait till we see the cost before we authorize.
That's the big thing.
Oh, this doesn't commit you to it. It would commit us to trying to get to that timeline.
I think you're asking for consensus right now on something we just barely heard and something so huge that I don't really think it's under any goodwill to actually, maybe we could put it on for when we have budget discussion, if you want to amend that agenda, so that we have some time to think about it. But I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen. What happens if they decide not to close Brewster after we've been given funding for Memorial? I'm sure we could come up with a lot of questions that.
I was just thinking that too, because there goes the cost, the savings that we thought will not be able to be factored in because it can't be closed. So the savings may not be as cost effective as you originally thought. They would all be contingent on Brewster actually being, like, both schools closing.
If the plan was to close Brewster, again, as we originally talked about this, we talked about repurposing, keeping it open for preschool and possibly other things. Again, that's But I think it's a good point.
But I think we also haven't even had those conversations because we're still waiting for the report back from Silver Petroselli. Like, these are definitely conversations we would have had we had that report back yet.
So I think if you do want to end up sending it to referendum, March 22nd would be your last date to do so. To keep this timeline. So I'm not saying you have to do it now.
You don't have to do it now. And maybe, and I didn't mean to put pressure on you guys. I guess what I'm saying is if you thought that was not even a possibility, we would start thinking through different timelines at this point. It is the earliest opportunity to go to referendum and it's, I think one of the reasons why we think it may be helpful is that we could communicate around our budget and this concurrently and try to make the points that we tried to make during the budget proposal about how budgets are not going to really decline significantly in this district unless and until we consolidate at the elementary level.
I think we got a couple issues. The budget is a fairly significant increase. The debt service, even if the project was $10 million, would be $1 million a year more in debt service, higher than we have in the capacity. So you're looking at two increases on top of each other that, we may not be able to show the savings at this time. So I think it's a little bit premature to ask for us to go to vote on the referendum time. It may be more appropriate as we look at both of these budgets to separate them in terms of the timing, even if it's in the summer, or you don't want to affect the operating budget too much if we're showing increases, 2 years out or 3 years out. So, the other thing that is in the past, I don't know what Silver Petroselli is going to give us, but when we looked at the expansion of this 2016, we were talking about a single school at Memorial. One of the issues in terms of the grant received is the space you have available. And that reduces the amount of the grant because there's space available at other facilities or other schools. And so I would like to see those numbers done as well.
So it would only.
And I think they don't normally do that.
So Silver Petroselli wouldn't determine that piece, whether there's space at other schools. It is a space standard based on enrollment. That would decrease. But what you're saying is very real, that the state has said if you have other buildings, but if it's to improve the educational aspect of it, which is what this is, oftentimes they allow that. So that's the focus.
Yeah, there's just there's a lot more complications in front of us right now. It just seems like it might be appropriate to see the number.
And I think it's important to also see the makeup of that grant and what it states for changing the educational.
Right, I was thinking of
design of the actual K-5. We've yet to see that.
the wording.
Correct.
That's subjective to the reviewer. I'll try to find out, but
They
I
said
don't know
March
that I've
1st,
ever
right?
seen any, like data on what they consider.
Did they say March 1st for the costs?
Yeah.
So that gives us 2 or 3 weeks after that. So.
It's still
Yeah,
tight.
a lot of things to consider. A lot of things.
It is tight, but it's respectful to what's.
It is tight, but it's something that we should probably have. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think we all want pretty much that same thing. And if those numbers come in, we have an opportunity to take a look at them. I think maybe we can just get together and do that then.
I think giving any consensus tonight really goes back on what we said, that we really weren't going to engage the public until we have those numbers.
Right, and
We don't want to repeat past mistakes.
right, I was just gonna say, one thing that we don't want is for, oh, okay, yes, let's think about that. Let's set that timeline and have that be misconstrued as approval of, yes, we're going to do it. So I appreciate the information as information. And then as we move forward, like, what was it, March 20 something, you said?
Second.
I mean, I think that does give us time to digest and be mindful and deliberate about it, rather than saying, oh, yeah. And have that be misconstrued as tacit approval for a plan.
Worst case is you just don't get on, well, not worst case, but you just don't make the May
Right,
referendum.
right,
You
there's,
just
yeah.
Do one the next month.
Okay,
And the other thing, Doug, that the bond council went over this, logistics of the regional plan amendment. That's where that came from. When you said you got 2 hours ago, I assume that was from.
Yes,
Your bond council.
yes,
Right.
yes.
So we have it, that
Well,
writing,
We'll sign off on it, yep.
right?
Okay, moving on. Elementary literacy program. What I want to do is make you guys aware that whether we elect to move forward or not with the program that was presented last month in the work session, if we are seriously considering an implementation for next fall, we'd like a decision to move forward or to pump the brakes and to not move forward no later than our next regular board meeting, which is on March the 8th. And it's a big decision. And so you may have lots more questions. I know many of you, or several of you, I don't know if all of you, did drop questions into the Google Doc that Stephanie was responding to. And but some of those questions you might want to ask in public with the group to get more discussion around it, or you may have follow-up questions, even since those have been answered. And so I guess what I want to ask is, I see a few different ways we could go here, given that March 8th is like 28 days from now. And it'll come up quickly, all these other things we're talking about, budget and memorial and everything else. One is we could schedule a student achievement committee meeting now that we've kind of resuscitated that committee, even though it hasn't met. That might give time, and any board member could attend that meeting, even those that aren't formally part of that committee. Alternatively, we could schedule a work session prior to the March 8th meeting to do this with the full board the way we kind of did in January. And we could also do both, or we could do neither. I hope we're not doing neither, because I feel like it's important to have this conversation. So if you knew tonight what your kind of inkling was, then we could go back to Lucy and Lindsay, and we don't have to pick the date tonight, but at least to know, does it make sense to go to Achievement Committee first? Or back to the full board, or kind of what's the preference from anyone around that topic?
yeah, I'm just gonna ask for board comments, because definitely at a bare minimum, we need to have a discussion at the student achievement committee meeting.
Yeah, I think it should go back to student achievement first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can have a discussion if there was
And
anything.
anybody can attend, so.
There truly was, 22 questions asked on that document. And I was a little taken aback by some not getting some responses and just saying, don't hesitate to call me to discuss it. That was a bit frustrating, just on my part, but looking at the EL program itself, is there anything that, I don't know if anyone wants to pull up the literacy program document, if there's anything in that where you feel like you didn't get any clarification or needed more clarification. If not, I think Jamie and I can always take it back to student achievement and process that there. More, is there anything that? you have?
I just have one question. Well, I don't know who answers it, but, or if it could go back to be answered in the, and I could put it back in there as, has anybody looked into, I think it's Wit and Wisdom, which actually correlates with foundations, which we already have.
So we've looked at all of the state approved programs. We actually went on a site visit today, myself and 3 teachers to Guilford. And I know there's been a lot of questions around foundations and integrity, and I have now spoken to 4 districts who have been implementing this at various stages. All of the districts that I've spoken to used foundations in the past and have decided to move away from foundations and move more towards the skills block. And so basically the message around why they decided to use the skills block over foundations, and we got to see it today, which was amazing. Foundations teaches those skills in isolation.
Mhm.
And the majority, pretty much everything that's done with foundations is done in a whole group setting. So you're gonna have your learners who are at various levels and they're all doing the same thing. The skills block that is embedded with this program, it starts with the whole group instruction. So so today, for example, just to give you an example, for those of you who might not understand what foundations and skill block and how that is. The activity that we saw today in the kindergarten class, the teacher started by reading a short story to the kids. It was about like a mouse and I can't even think, a cat that were on a bus and talking about gum and what happened on the bus. And after that short story, the teacher did a quick little comprehension check, asked some questions with the learners. And then all the learners got decodables. And they all sat and read their decodables to each other. And then once that was done, and it took like 10, 15 minutes tops, these kids, and it was amazing to see, they got up independently, kindergartners, and they all went to 4 different stations. There was one station that had the teacher working with a group of learners. There was another station where there was a teacher's aide that was working more with the decodables. And then there were 2 other groups. One group of learners was reading independent stories. And then another group was working on some of their sight words. And 8 minutes went by and a buzzer went off and these kids got up and they switched. So it's all small group. And what the teacher is doing with the kids that are at that station with her is she is targeting the instruction based on the needs of those learners. And so everything that we've heard about the skills block is that it's very personalized, it's very small group, and it really pinpoints exactly what the learners need, so that they're not all receiving the same whole group instruction for that whole 45, 50, 60-minute block. And the teachers that came with me today, we had a conversation about foundations and the skills block and what they felt. And they all agreed that they thought that the skills block, if nothing else, they would actually want to start with the skills block and then maybe start thinking about pulling in some of those modules.
So it sounds to me like the skills block that it's called now is really more of like what used to be maybe daily 5. Jen, you know, I mean, I taught first grade for 25 years. So, and I taught 10 of them here in this district. So I know what you're saying, but
Yes.
That's just good teaching. That's been happening for a really long time. I, as a first grade teacher, even 20 years ago, 15 years ago, was doing the same thing, what you're saying. I don't need a program, a brand new program to show me that. I've always had different centers in my classroom where as soon as I had my guided reading group, as they were called also, they went to their different centers and were very independent. It's classroom management.
Right.
So again, it sounds great, but it doesn't sound any different to me enough to really make it sound any different than what
Right.
good teachers have already been doing.
Right, and I think part of it too is the way that the resources were developed to fit within the program itself. Just helps it to, like, I know, for example, Mary Beth today had made a comment about how she really liked how the decodables, the way that the sounds were introduced to the learners, it was done in context and it wasn't done in isolation.
Right.
And I think all of the resources that they're pulling together within the program, and again, we talked a lot today with the coach, and again, I've talked a lot with other districts about how it is a program, it's not a script. It's not meant to be a script. We talked to the coach and a few teachers today about how, you know, they read it, they read the lessons, but they still have to adjust based on the needs of the learners in front of them.
Right.
And they do a lot of very creative things with it, but I think it's the way that the program develops, brings all these resources together and how they creatively, the decodables, the way that they are and how the patterns are. They change every week, and just the pattern itself and how they decided to put them together. It helped. I don't know, like that's,
Yeah.
We've gotten very good feedback about it. I have not heard anything negative yet about those districts that have decided to move away from foundations and move more towards the skills block.
What districts are those outside of Guilford?
So Westerly, Rhode Island, the whole district has been implementing this for about 7 years now. North Middlesex. Right?
North Middlesex, Massachusetts.
Yes, thank you. In Massachusetts, they've been implementing it fully for 2 years, but some teachers have been implementing it for about 5 to 6 years. And then I recently spoke to, what is the other school in Massachusetts?
It's a perfect reason for a student achievement meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna
Feels like
say,
we almost started
yeah,
there.
and I was gonna ask that maybe, it's just that everybody's here and they want to hear it, but I think we really need to delve into this more at the student achievement meeting. And so that as many of you that can attend as possible, it would be great. In the meantime, I would highly suggest that there were links that were put into that document that we asked questions. One of them broke down the kindergarten module and in detail, but take a look at some of the other grade levels as well. I mean, you could be in there for hours, but there's just so many, I looked at the upper grades, look at some of the trade books that they use for the reading. Because you're talking about the skills blocks, but that only goes up to grade 2.
Right.
It
And then
doesn't
there's
go,
an all
and then there's
black
a
and-
whole different
yeah.
process for grades 3 and up. So, it really takes some time to go through there, check everything out, look at the videos, just, I mean, you don't have to read it every single word, just kind of skim. And I think you'll, for the most part, will get the idea. And then you can go back and delve into some of those areas that you're not sure, because I keep going back, and you just put another video on recently that I looked at, and it also talks about, there was a circle with different, I don't know what they were called, but different areas like crew and the students and all, and each one of them is defined. And then if you click on it, there's a video that goes with it too. So, to give
So
you.
Lucy, you and I just talked about that today, and you
Right.
still had many questions
Yep.
about it. So would that be at student achievement that we would discuss
Yeah,
it further?
yeah,
Okay,
so
because
that-
I know
and-
you had many questions still after.
This way
looking at that.
you'll have a little better feel for what they're talking about and also, yeah, let's bring this to, not that I want to cut the discussion because I think everybody wants to know, but we need to bring this to student achievement so we can just focus on it, start a little bit earlier
When is that?
and really get into it.
When is
It
it?
has to be scheduled.
It has to be scheduled so that they'll, you guys will figure.
Yeah,
it
I'll
out
send an
because
email
of-
and I'll see if we can get some consensus for those that want to be there, that are on the committee, and those who that aren't, don't want to be there. And see if we can schedule something. Sounds good.
Okay.
That sounds good.
4:30 at the earliest.
We don't want you speeding home.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna move on to staff reports. Kim?
Yep, so as of we sit here in, February 8th, the financials to the end of January, the general fund is 54% expended and revenue 58% received. MTA 35% expended and 31% of revenue has been received. Support staff remote grievance hearing has been rescheduled to February 22nd. They had our attorney had a lengthy, list of backup supporting documentation that Tippy Pop gathered that, went back into the archives and pulled a bunch of stuff out, and we submitted that. So I don't have a link yet. When I do, I'll let anyone know if anyone wants to attend. It's a Zoom meeting. The building committee has, and this is in regards to Memorial K-5. At the last building committee, it was suggested by the members that we have an estimate appraiser for the Silver Petrocelia estimate, just to make sure that the numbers that we're working with, I guess it's kind of a second opinion, will be accurate. And then also suggested a construction manager. So I just want to put that on your radar. I'm not looking for anything, just putting that on the radar that if this project is to go forward, those are just some additional expenditures, which are part of the cost of the construction of the project anyways, but they suggested that as well as if we were to purchase any land from St. Coleman's Church, we'd need a land appraiser to figure out how much that would be.
Can I jump in there real
Yes.
quickly too? I just think the important thing is, going back to the previous discussion, we would have to jump on that, because if we don't get the information from Silver Petrocelli till around the 1st of March, and several weeks later, we have to go out, we have to get this independent appraisal done like within a couple of weeks, right? Because I think the discussion at the building committee, and I don't want to, get ahead of that part of the agenda, was, I think the suggestion was it's going to help us put the right number on the referendum And it would be good to have that second opinion, and I agree with that, and that was from some of our folks that have been through this in other districts. So I think, and there is a cost associated with that, correct? And I think that's the other reason we bring it to you. So just like we've paid Silver Petroselli, we would have to pay this independent appraiser and not even know if this thing's gonna get, approved. So.
And not even further to that point, a land appraiser, we would need to know the cost of the land before it went out to referendum. So that might be something, if you're interested in approving for me to start initiating, then I would need to know that we may end up spending that money and then it failed a referendum. That would be a piece we need to have.
So we need to know.
I don't even know what they charge. I can find out, report back, but I reached out to a building committee member and asked if they had any names that they could provide me.
They indicated it's eligible cost of the project. Then.
Sure, if the project goes through, yeah. Lunch participation, I'm just following up on, we have seen an uptick in Cog and Chad with more students buying lunch. And then the other schools have remained sort of flat, participation is down. Doug spoke about in the slides about Senate Bill 929, that's expanding free lunch for all, effective 7/1/23. It has not passed, but it's a bill in there. And what it would essentially do would have the district's general fund, it could not come out of the food service fund, the district's general fund pay for the lunch for all the students who do not qualify for free and reduced through the normal process. An estimate cost of the district for 1 year, Mark and I worked out to be $355,000. So we don't, it's a very worthwhile, worthy, noble cause. But to pass it on as an unfunded mandate is something that, my Casbo group is not supporting. Like Doug said, we like the idea, but let's do it different. The state has said they would offer some grants, but we don't have a lot of luck with grants, or if we do, they're very small. So putting that on your radar, that's effective 7/1/23, which then I'd have to put in the budget, which this budget tonight does not include that. And this is sort of new. The other thing was saying the governor's proposed budget, he mentioned that there's going to be, and this, I don't know how, I have to find out more about this, but free lunch for the rest of the school year for everybody. And I'm assuming this school year, I'm assuming the state budget would cover that, but it's not till 24-25. So I'm really not sure what he meant by that statement, but if you read his speech, it says free lunch for everybody for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
So more to come on that.
There's been a big
The
push.
budget won't be
Oh,
adopted
there has
to our
been.
schools.
Yeah, well, that's what the Senate bill really is about, the 929.
But
I'm sorry, Bob.
the budget won't be adopted till at the earliest,
Exactly.
July 1st.
So I'm not sure what the
We'll be
statement
done
was, but he
school
did
be-
say that.
Let's see the reimbursement.
Might have meant the next year.
It wasn't
know,
clear.
and he
It
might have
wasn't
been-
clear at all.
Wasn't clear. And he might have been referring to this Senate Bill 929, but I'm not sure. So I just. Security grant, there's another round of security grant come out to which we are 52% eligible. We're now eligible the same reimbursement rate as our school construction. But again, we'd have to pay the 48%. And it's limited to first responder communications. So such as a thing like Mutual Link that we talked about. What was the other thing, Ken? The PA system, we need some PA system upgrades. And then that might qualify, but again, we're paying for 48% of it. And we haven't had a lot of luck getting these grants in the past. And paving RFP for Pickett Lane is being opened on March 3rd. And the HVAC grant through the state COVID money, we should find out by the end of February if we were accepted or not and for how much.
Are we losing money in food services right now?
We do, as a general rule, when all lunch was free and reduced or free because of COVID, we were getting reimbursed at a higher rate than we were actually spending for meals. And that was everybody, like everybody was doing well. So, but now we're back to the same formula. And yes, we're losing money. We're sustaining because we had the funds from during COVID, but yeah. Mark does a very good job though balancing the cost of the meal with this, the price. That's it. That's it.
Thank you. Next item is Liza for the iReady PSAT data.
Yes,
Hello, everybody. So I have some data from the iReady and the PSATs that were taken this year. The iReady diagnostic is a benchmark assessment. It is used to determine learners' strengths and needs in the areas of math and reading so that the teacher can then target instruction based on those needs shown in the diagnostic. There is a scaled score from 0 to 800. And the scaled score is then based on the expectations set by the Common Core State Standards to show whether a learner is on grade level or not on grade level. The learners here take it 3 times per year. They take it in September, December, and March. You'll notice they do not take it at the end of the year because it is a benchmark assessment. It's not a summative, is not meant to be a summative assessment, rather to inform instruction. This year for the reading diagnostic, results show that 56% of learners are scoring on grade level in winter as compared to 44% in the fall. 18% of learners are scoring 2 or more grade levels behind, down from 23% in the fall. So that is 12% increase in learners moving up to what is considered early on grade level or mid or above grade level.
This is for grades.
Learners in grades 2, learners in grades 2 through 8 took this assessment in both fall and winter for the reading.
And is there a breakdown by grade as well?
There is a breakdown by grade.
Is there any significant differences between their total?
There are some areas that need to be looked at more than others. Yes.
Are we able to get that breakdown along with the actual scores as opposed to the percentages?
Which the scaled scores of each student?
For each grade level,
By grade level.
the average,
Are you asking if it averages it per grade level?
yes.
I don't know that answer.
I don't think it
I
gives
don't-
the
it does not
score,
give the
it
scaled
just gives
scores
the
for grade level,
percentages.
just gives percentage. So for mathematics, results show that 42% of learners are scoring on grade level in winter as compared to 24% in the fall. So that is an increase of 18%, moving to early on or at or above grade level. And 12% of learners are scoring 2 or more grade levels behind, down from 21% in the fall. Learners in grades 1 through 8 took this assessment in the fall, and grades K through 8 took this assessment in the winter. That is a instructional choice to have kindergartners wait to take that.
While we were asking about a breakdown by grade, this is just showing scores for this year. Can we have a comparison to, in the past, we've seen comparisons like for 2017-18,
I have that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that and where this falls, especially in relation to pre-COVID scores, you know, because yeah.
For reading, I can get you the exact numbers for reading for over the last 4 years, so in 2019 through this year. For reading, each score in each band is within 0 to 3%. So it's actually very steady in reading. In math, the current diagnostic scores are slightly higher than they were starting in 2019. It's gone up each year. I can get you the exact numbers if you would like that, but that is the trend.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I would like
Yeah, I
to
think
see
what
that.
Bob and I were kind of asking was for the actual numbers by grade level.
Okay. So we can get that.
Yeah, that's what we just asked for.
Yeah, we have seen charts like that before.
And iReady also gives a growth score. So instead of just how a learner is scoring on the diagnostic as compared to their grade level, it shows how much that they are growing throughout the year. The growth score actually needs to be greater. The lower score a learner starts. So the growth needs to increase if they are 3 grade levels below as compared to those that are already on grade level. However, it does require that all learners to grow. So even if a learner is above grade level, they are still, of course, have to grow within the school year, which is something to look at as well in the data. We do have for the growth scores as far as the bands are concerned. We do have growth in all band areas, including those at the highest level. As far as the diagnostic growth in reading, by winter, 46% of learners have met the yearly typical growth goal. 33% have not made more than 20% growth. So that is an area to look at.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that typical growth to date? So it would be, they're on track to meet their whole growth by,
Nope, I even asked the rep that because I was like, really? They've already made their yearly growth target.
so then the two questions that come out of that is one, you know, because of the summer slide, giving the test for the first time so early gives them really low goals because they haven't had the time to get their learning muscles back into shape. So everyone's scoring artificially low, which means their growth goal is artificially low. So my question is, do we, after this winter data collection, do we adjust their goals? Because we want to not say 46%.
That was gonna be my question.
Right? That 46% now needs a new growth goal.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Right. Yes, and the program does adjust. that.
Nice. Okay.
Is some of the psychology behind that, like a formative test at the beginning? Is it to pique the student's interest to say, all right, this is what I don't know, and it's gonna hurt me because I didn't know that? Is it gonna make them, is their psyche gonna say, I'm gonna do better the next time? I'm kind of thinking that's the whole reason for this, you know, testing once and twice and 3 times.
I think it's actually more to inform the instruction for the teacher, because what it does is it breaks down the actual bands with which they're having difficulty, so that, and the iReady program gives them lessons based on the areas of need. So it's not really even for the learner to see their score. They don't even really need to see their score. All it's to inform the teacher of what areas that learner needs to grow in.
But it's also designed to show growth, basically. I mean, you start with.
Yeah, it's all that. Yeah.
We
It's for data. It is. It's for data, exactly.
We used to
But yeah.
be able to show those that are exceeding their, not just meeting their growth, but exceeding their growth targets. We still get that.
That did not come up on the report, but I can ask the rep if there is a
We
way.
used to see it, right?
Eating, okay. And then you can also see the growth in mathematics, which is at 20% have met the yearly typical growth goal.
Oh, that's an interesting percentage, because if you look at the iReady achievement math, you'd see the results show 42% of the learners are scoring on grade level, which is quite an increase from 24%. But yet it's only 20% of the learners actually met a typical growth. So.
And again, there's 3 kinds of lies, right? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. Because if you go in, and again, we're looking at, well, there's 2 things. One is 24% because they've only been in school for a week. And so it's nice to kind of have that padding in there. And I'm not saying it's done deliberately, but that's what the numbers look great. If you look at it that way, just as growth. But I also really want to focus on the fact that 58% of the learners are not on grade level.
Right, that's
Right.
what, that's what I.
That is
That's a major concern.
I'm assuming it's because of COVID or something, but why is it that in 2020, 21 was only 77 students? Because that seems skewed to me too. With
That's the
data, right?
PSAT.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry if you're not on that one yet. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So in that year, the
question. I wanna
PSAT
know.
was not all learners. That year.
It's almost like that year shouldn't even be in there. Like everything else is all the numbers and I'm like, students is 77. Sorry about that. No problem.
For the PSAT, this is a 10th, 10th and 11th graders took the PSAT. There are 3 sections to take, 1 in reading, 1 in writing and language, 1 in math. Learners receiving total scores as well as scores for those subsections. In addition to receiving scores, which I find is really great about the PSAT right now, which I certainly did not have, was you can go back in and you can see every single question and whether you answered it correct or incorrect. They'll tell you what your answer was and whether it was correct and incorrect. They will tell you the area or the domain that question correlates with. And then you can go on Khan Academy and you can take those courses or those levels that correspond to those areas that you had difficulty with in the PSAT. So it really, these assessments are really designing now to help learners where they need it the most, which I find is really great, rather than here's your score, study, or here's your score, you didn't do well, you did well. It's really designing to move them forward.
Where did they do that with the PSAT and then finding it in Khan Academy? Where is that done?
They have to sign into their College Board account, and then right on the College Board account, once they're in theirs, they get their score. There's a score page, and then right in there it says, you click on a link and it says, work on your, I don't know exactly what it
Is
says.
it just an independent thing, or I don't know if you, or is it like, do they do it in advisory, or are kids just expected to just take it upon themselves?
Oh, no. The guidance counselors went into all the 11th grade classrooms. They actually sat through one of
Okay.
their presentations. They do a whole presentation. They make sure every learner can log into their account right there. And if they can't, they help them to re-get into their account. They show them how to find their score. They show them how to get to the place where their score is shown, each question, and then they also show them how to link to Khan Academy. They make sure they can get into Khan Academy. I sat through the whole thing. It was really great to see, and that's how I knew about it. And I was like, this is really.
Is this goals, is the state goal, the national goal, and what's the actual number?
Yeah, thank you.
That's
Excuse me?
One of my questions.
These goals are, I mean, in the past, we've seen the regional goal, regional results for the district. We've seen compared to the state averages for those things and the federal or the national averages.
Right.
So, so what goal are we measuring here, do you know?
On the past slides that I have seen, that's been for the SAT, which is a statewide test that is done. The PSAT is not always statewide done. I did not see that on the former slides.
And do we know the actual value of the goal? You know, is it 1,300,
Right,
1,100?
yeah, what's the,
Well, at one point, somebody had said it was 1050, which is absolutely absurd.
The goal is 1050.
That's what we had seen something here, I think. I can't remember whether or not that was.
I thought that was the range.
no, the range goes up to 1,500.
Yeah.
And I'll have you know, my first time I took the SATs, I got 1050, good guy.
Well, look at you now. I am so proud. But what I'm saying is that.
All I remember about the SAT is my score beat my son and he went to Yale and I went to UConn.
There you go.
They still hold it over.
So the student that is struggling, right, and didn't do so well, like on the PSAT, let's say, or whatever, right? And they're instructed to go into all this. Where is the follow-up? I mean, some of these kids don't even self-advocate for themselves. So where's the follow-up? Where's the responsibility come to the district or the teacher to do the follow-up? Where is that?
That's a great question. They use this in their English, and their English and their math teacher can follow up with them. The counselor can follow up with them.
Is there documentation?
They don't.
There's not documentation that I know of someone following up
So it's
with
like a
them
student
doing their
follow-up, basically.
extra work.
So again, going back to tier one, right, like there are, and it's actually, I mean, I am not a math teacher, but there's even just I don't even think it's 90 minutes. Professional learning experience that math teachers can take to help dissect the problems that are on SATs and PSATs and incorporate those strategies into their class. And again, it's not teaching to the test. It's not like giving a bunch of bank of questions. It's just like, here's how you dissect this equation or, problem. And again, teachers rave about it because they've never looked at it that way, at deconstructing the problem. And it has a marked, it's research-based, it works.
That was the best 1050 ever.
Right? I took it again and got better, but so.
I think if anyone comes up with any other questions, I mean, feel free to what I would do is, email Doug with a copy to Liza as well as to Stephanie. And, put your questions out there. You put us all on it. Just don't reply all. If you have something to say, just put your question out and we'll get the response. Okay. Anything further? All right, moving on. We have under new business, a vote to approve the strong field trip to Camp School. I just have a couple of questions, couple of things I sort of start. First of all, it says amount of time students will miss from school. It says NA, but yet they're out during a couple of school days.
It's an overnight.
So
usually.
no, it's just an overnight.
It's an overnight.
Overnight,
Yeah, it's just.
but they're starting in the morning,
My understanding is
And they're
they
going
they
till-
leave on a Thursday and they come back
Friday
on a
afternoon.
Thursday morning, and they come back Friday night.
Yeah.
So they're actually missing 2 days, Thursday, Friday.
It's kind of instructional.
Yeah, it is instructional.
I think
Yeah.
because it's like for the whole school, it's kind of considered
Yeah.
their school day for those 2 days as opposed to like.
Yeah, it says if entire grade level is not attending.
They've been doing this.
Yeah, it's about, seventh grade has 100 students, about 80 to 85 will probably go. And, so that was another question that I had. And then, the student activity fund, I know we always talk about funding for kids who don't have the money, and it said they don't have any additional funds. We do, we always available. And the other piece was the instructional objectives, it's supposed to be another page, but,
If there are students who cannot afford, there's a way for them to reach out to the district to ask for help.
The permission slips should say that. It should be sort of a standard thing that. No, we've
I
not
don't
had
think
that
it
in the
was
past.
supposed to.
I don't
I'm not sure they all do anymore.
Back in my time, there were kids that didn't go, including myself, but that's okay.
We wouldn't want that to happen. Right.
The actual.
Oh.
The actual.
Like chaperone?
They're saying.
Oh.
See, I tried to get you a volunteer. You're welcome.
We have no money raised for students who cannot pay as of 1/13.
right.
Yeah, I will send an email to all principals tomorrow to say that all their permission form slips need to have the fund, that we do have that. We've used it before, so there's whoever submitted that must. not have done that.
Are we able to table this to get corrections for next meeting, or is this something that are we looking at a timeline for?
I don't know the answer, but we talked to Cheryl today, and I think the thing about funds raised is saying like they haven't done any independent fundraising as a school, as some field trips might do, especially if they're more extracurricular, because the district does this as a matter of
That probably should
practice.
just be taken out though, because it's confusing probably to people reading that.
So I think the question on that's more for like stuff like the golf trip.
Yes,
Has the golf team fundraised
Yeah.
to lower the cost?
that's right.
Says
That's
it's
right.
funding available for students who cannot pay. What is the source? And it's blank. Underneath it, it
Probably
says
don't
student
know.
activity fund. We have no money raised for students who cannot pay as of 1/13.
Right, and then it says, I worry about the cost of students dropping down this summer.
Right.
All right, so we
Drop
table
the
it. for
cost down.
clarification.
Yeah, how much is it per student? 215, but.
It says 210 to 220.
Yeah, and it will increase if students drop down.
I will
The
get the
number of
word out
students.
tomorrow. All permission slips should say that.
So we can put this on the agenda, maybe they can make some adjustments on, is that what we're saying?
Well, I just
Well,
started this the timeline.
Well, it's not till June
It's not
first,
the
but I
form
don't
that-
know.
That's not the form that goes home to the parents, correct? That's.
No.
No,
This
this
is
is
as
just
long as we
for
put it on the form that goes home to the parents, that there's fundraising and that there are funds available. Yeah.
So we
And
could
that
we could
may
make a
have that
motion,
already.
could make a motion to approve it conditionally to it being explained that students are able to go.
That may be on the permission slip already. I
As long
thought
as
that's
we
what
can
you were
make
looking
sure.
at. Yeah.
No.
I just have a quick
No, it's
question
not.
on
So it's like open to the whole grade, students that have like more intense needs, but they have like a special thing on their permission slip that says they have the ability to go and that school staff will be there to support their child through the overnight.
Jen, I know that question.
Nice question.
Students, it's open to the whole grade level, so students that maybe have more intense needs and they get the permission slip. Is there like a separate attachment that says, school, so the parents don't have to worry and feel that they have to be the chaperone for their child, like
Yeah.
those.
Oh, no, we.
They're taking care of all the allergies like that.
Yeah, there's a nurse that goes
And
out.
kids are going allergies, they're all prepared for that.
But not even allergies, other.
Like one-to-one, it's like a one-to-one. It's still the other one.
That's like separate from the
That's
chaperone.
separate.
Sorry, I just didn't understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's part of the IEP, right?
So do we want to make a motion to approve this as is?
So moved.
The field trip.
Well, as,
Well,
not as.
Oh,
That's it.
I retract.
Sure.
okay, so we're gonna make a motion to approve the field trip request for where are we here?
Kim Jewel.
Camp Jewel. With
And Friday
With-
Friday,
June 1st, June 2nd, with-
Condition that the funding for all students is updated and corrected and made available to parents.
Okay, so we got Linda. Well, Linda already moved
All
first.
right, I'll
Yes,
second that.
you're going, Linda.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we got Linda and we got John. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is the board committees. I had Meg send out to you, it's in your Google Docs, just an update because we had quite a discussion at our retreat and so you should have that there and I'll just go over it just so that it's in for the record. So right now we had already going our building committee, our finance committee, a policy committee. We did have a change. We have Linda is now on that committee. And our human resources committee, ACES and utilization, which is the full board. What we decided at the retreat was to resurrect the achievement committee with the same two co-chairs, and we have Linda and John also on there. Remember that any board member can attend any of these committees at any time. The ERC committee, we decided that would meet when necessary. And we had a couple of board members, Bob and Jason on that one. Communications is going to be an ad hoc committee. It's only going to be for 1 year from January 2023 to January 2024. And I'd like to kind of ask this committee to sort of pull together. I don't have a chair. You guys can decide, you guys, ladies can decide what you want to do. We have Amanda, Mariah, Maura, and Lindsay on that committee. District school climate liaisons, so that the board agreed that both myself and Lindsay, your chair and your vice secretary, would be attending the district school climate committee meetings. So I know I didn't reach out to you, Jen, but you're here. So now you know. And then the other piece that we started to talk about but never finished, and I know that Mariah's been bringing it up, is whether or not we're going to have student representatives on our board. And I kind of recommended going to, I had talked about student advisory, but those are like, there's multiple meetings of those, so we could never attend them all. But there is a principals advisory committee meeting
Thank you.
The live feed went down for a minute or two.
Okay, rather than having one or two students come to our board meeting. So I'm gonna put that out for discussion. We never really quite discussed it or decided in the past. We actually would have 44 students that we would have access to if we attended the principal advisory meetings. And
How
a
would
good
we-
cross
so
section.
How would we structure that though? Would we have certain members go to certain schools? Would we rotate?
And those are during the school
We-
day and during the
They-
working day, correct? So that
They are
eliminates
during
some
the school
people's
day.
ability.
That's probably one of the drawbacks. How we structure it is up to us. We can have the same representatives go, board represent, we would be there to listen, to hear what the students have to say and perhaps bring some of their issues back to our board. And if we wanted to, we could invite the students in to also present their issues. I mean, there's various ways we can do that. But I feel that the point of us connecting with students is to connect with as many students as possible in a way that we can. So those are my thoughts.
So if they're already meeting, they have like an agenda that they discuss, or they just. kind of-
My understanding is they don't really have agendas. They're kind of open-ended and they just, whatever the students want to discuss. So
I think it's structured a little bit differently
little
to each school. Obviously, we're looking at like age differences, but I know Strong, it's just more, it's more of input, you know, the kids they're willing to talk about things they've seen or changes they'd like to see. As you get lower, you look at like student senate at like Memorial. Like that. Yeah.
Well, I was only looking at the middle school and the high school.
I think that's
At
like a
this
viable
point.
option to get us more involved, but I think it's completely different from a student rep on the Board of Ed. The student rep on the Board of Ed, based on like the policies and the people that I reached out to, like at CAVE, it was more upper level classmen, like juniors, seniors, and getting them involved in the democratic process, being able to sit in on meetings, not vote, but provide their input. And I mean, going to the advisories, I think would still be beneficial for people who could come, but I think it's having like them taking some ownership and having stakeholders at the table when we make, you know, decisions and.
How is that
things.
person, how's that person elected? How's
So it
that person
depends on
selected?
how we would want to decide. A bunch of different districts do it different ways. It's either recommended by like a principal at the school based on they have to meet certain criteria, GPA, extracurriculars, whatever, you know, we determined, or some places do it where the students vote and get to take part in that as well. And, you know, they decide whether or not they want to participate, and the students in those classes get to vote for their peers and decide whether or not they want to be on it. But
Some districts
That was
do it
in-
by a democratic process, just like,
Yeah.
like we do. So it does lend support to looking at, a lot of the kids are in these civics classes or they're very involved and would really like to see a process, that is more,
and they have
not just within the
terms.
books, you know, they're
Like-
really looking towards their lives and what they want to do with.
Sounds aligned with learner-centered experiences.
Little bit. And it's not where you change it, like they wouldn't change it, have a term, so I'm not sure, you had mentioned they change a bunch of times a year, there wouldn't be a change. We'd be voting on and we determine the length of the term for that individual.
It
but
could be, there's a couple districts that
It
have done it.
depends what we
where
decide the
the
model.
ones I think that have been appointed and haven't done it as a democratic process, they've rotated out over the course of the year from different areas of specialties and.
That's the
and what
thing, you
kids
want to
are-
get someone, I mean, you want to get a representative that represents
That's
the
what I
top, the
think, yeah.
total
Yeah.
school environment. I mean,
Yeah.
not
I
to
mean,
say
that's
that
hard to
one,
get
not to say
from
that one individual is going to be any different or whatever, but
And unfortunately, I mean, we've had a lot of representatives on our committees before, and unfortunately, I don't feel like it's a true representation because
I agree.
we just hear it's always the kids that are either in the honor society or on the sports teams or on, like, it's all the kids that are already
kudos to them.
connected anyway, and it's great because they want to add something to their, you know, for filling out applications and stuff. Or, but I feel like if we're really trying to get a true sense of how a feel is or what opinions, that I just feel like we're gonna get one opinion or one-sided opinion. I'd be more interested in hearing different opinions or in a setting where the kids are feeling open to discussing stuff. I really think that's how we're gonna really be able to hear and get some feedback. But I mean, I still like the idea of it, but I just don't think that's how we're gonna really feel how students in general as a whole are feeling about topics that come up as
Well, I
board
think
meeting.
a good thing would be to send, if eventually, if you want to, we can put it on an agenda for for next meeting or a meeting after, and we can look at all the districts that have done it where, it's been a democratic process versus appointed. In some districts they're allowing or not allowing, but by policy, they have to go back to their different schools and talk to, a diverse group of kids about what's going on in each school. And so that makes them accountable to really coming and saying, this is what I'm hearing from this school. This is, what I'm.
I like that idea.
Feedback.
I mean, at least that makes them,
Structure it to be
Right.
that way.
Right.
at least they're-
It'd be us developing how we.
Right.
think it-
So you could be getting a member of the school community that has their personal opinions, we also are accountable to their schools.
One thing I had brought up in an email a while back was, if we have a representative sitting here for a full board meeting, weighing in on everything, like things such as the budget. Like we're all elected by the town to discuss this and make these decisions. How would that work? Would they discuss this?
I think in a democratic process, they represent the students, is the mindset from a lot of the districts.
Right,
That
that
have
they are
to consider.
actually elected officials.
Most of them are not voting board members.
They're not.
They're
They're
not,
not.
but they're gonna give input.
Yeah.
Their little eyes would glaze over.
I mean, I have the ones that have good set policies on student representatives really dictate what they're there, what they're there for.
And they go
Right,
through
but to-
training, right,
but
to
to
understand.
Amanda's point, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
to Amanda's point, though, how is it any different than a student coming here and giving us an update of what the school climate is? If that's the case.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I also see like, even with Christine and Hayden here tonight, we hear from them, but we don't really have discussion with them. I mean, we could ask some
We can
questions.
certainly have, we can certainly
But
do
it's a
that.
lot
and
to
expand
when you're not
that
sitting
as opposed to putting somebody on the board,
Yeah.
have them have a
Where you
voice. I also like that idea too. I think we should attend some of those, principle-based meetings with these kids, because I think we should be hearing that as well. But to have them sit here for 4 or 5 hours, yeah, that's just mean.
We are coming into a little bit of an area where if we were going in and sitting in just as passive observers, we don't want to stifle some of these kids to be able to say what's going on. 'Cause we don't
100%.
And maybe the high school, but I think a representative could go to those strong advisories and bring stuff back. They might be willing to talk with, an upperclassman there, like. Instead of, if we just go in and.
Like even a representative that's gonna be here, or if we pick a junior or senior, let's say, right, they have to, I would say they'd have to have a discussion with freshmen, sophomores, juniors and seniors, come back with a report and same with strong, and then come back here and articulate what those issues are or what they may be, and and have input when we have the achievement and where we're having some of those discussions within those committees and stuff.
I
But
think it facilitates communication with the learners,
Agreed.
because we don't
What
really have.
I
much
can
of that.
do, because we still have to go through policies, is this is actually the first time we really discussed it. I will send out, I have some information from 9 school districts, not regional school districts, they're individual schools. And I can send that out to you, and I can send out just the summary of what I received from our middle school and our high school principal advisory groups. And then we can probably pick up this discussion again and, throw out some questions as to what we need to consider, depending on what we decide to do. So,
And if it's
Okay.
appropriate, then not now, I promise. I'd love to share things that I've seen in this space work and not work, or potentially work, and it's all what the board really wants, and
Yep.
and some of the ideas you guys have discussed and some of them you haven't, so,
So between now
So
and
let's-
next meeting, if we put it on for next meeting, we can kind of get some data together.
Yeah.
If that's.
and I could
Could it be
send
good
out
to
what I
ask the
have,
students what
and
they
then,
might be interested in
I
too?
think that's
Yeah.
part of the process. I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
think
important
that's
to
some
say,
stuff too.
to go to, if you're looking at a representative from the junior and senior class, to go to those advisors. Their teacher advisors, but also Deb, and see if there's an interest in it. If there's not a huge interest, if there's only 2 kids that are willing to do it, it's not really representative of the democratic process.
That's my point.
well, and if you're talking about
We
a
have to
full-fledged,
start
like
somewhere.
ex
We have to
officio
get somewhere.
member that doesn't vote, like, think about the time commitment.
Well, that's what I mean.
Because in the
That's
places
why
where
I'm-
I've seen that
I'm
model
not
work,
100%
like
for it.
you're either
Thank
in or
you.
you're out. So that means every budget work session, that means the retreat, that means all of it. And that's, I don't know how you guys make it to all these things, but
But I don't want to discount also that there might not be kids that are willing to do that. I think it's important to really.
I'm not saying that they
Sure,
would.
some kids that maybe don't like extracurriculars, but they'd really like to devote their time and.
Yeah, oh, it could be very valuable. It's what you
Yeah,
guys want to do.
There's just a lot of moving parts. I
Yeah.
think when we look at it, we gotta go through policy, we gotta go see if there's interest, and then we have to, as a
Gotta
board,
figure out
figure out that's
how,
where we.
how you're going to pick these students or vet these students to come on.
But I think it's a good start.
I've always found the Devil's Advocate as a great resource for all of us to read, to get some sense of the climate here at Coggins. I mean, we pay for that. And I can see that maybe being expanded perhaps to have a strong one. You know, I mean, that would be student voice. It would certainly align with curriculum, get them to practice their writing skills and so on, developing their opinions. And it'd be a valuable resource for all of us to read that. That could be digital. You know, a lot of ways to get a staff, and we have a Devil's Advocate staff. There's probably 12 kids on it right now, I think. And would love to see that expand.
What worked when we were doing the project, the portrait of the citizen, is that we met with about 20 students in a circle. And we had a lot of discussion for a couple hours and gathered their ideas. We had we didn't have an elementary, but we had junior high and high school, and gathered a lot of the issues that and if you did that, for, 2 or 3 times a year, you probably get a pretty good sense of what was going on.
Maybe that's an idea too. I like the idea of having multiple students as opposed to a small number of students, because the more you have, the more of a wide range of impressions and,
I just wanted
points
to
of
make sure
view.
that we're targeting all of the kids, not just a specific group. Like, I'm almost like if you were gonna have like an impromptu meeting with, like, let's say we're gonna have all of the sports teams get together, or we're gonna have all of the bands get together. We're gonna have, but I don't want to hear just from one group. I want to hear from everybody.
Multiple.
I'm picturing
Yeah.
like the breakfast
that
club,
idea.
like.
I honestly don't think we're gonna get a true perspective of what's really going on if we don't talk to multiple
As many
groups.
stu-
Because there are, I could give you an
Awesome.
example with just my children alone. I mean, they just are they're jocks. This is what they do, and that's all they do. Where they don't necessarily get involved with the music and other things. And that's a whole different perspective. They have a different perspective of what they want to enjoy here in school. So I think we need to target all of them somehow. And maybe the kids themselves need to do that, to come here and give us that.
Unify rather than divide.
Right. So I mean, to have a representative come here who doesn't represent them all is not a fair and accurate depiction of what's going on in the school or
Yeah.
any of our schools.
I
That's just
definitely
my
see
opinion.
that, and I
Right.
think maybe it would be our job to maybe get them involved, to get them to different advisory meetings, get them involved in different schools, to get the outlooks of the students that they could bring back to us.
Absolutely.
And that would probably be up to us to facilitate to get.
And like I said, when you look at the good districts that are really successful in it, they've got a clear outline and a policy in place. So I think. I know Mariah had a big section on it at the Caves CAPS conference. I don't think any of us were able to go besides Mariah, but.
Yeah, so I'll take a look at it.
It's 8:25, so we will resurrect this discussion. Nice discussion today. I like Bob's idea too. I hadn't thought about that one either. And that's why it's good to discuss it. I just want to ask before it's 25 after 8. We've been here since 6 o'clock. We're going to go to committee reports, which is all the readings or discussions about the policies that are there. And then we're almost at the end of our meeting. Do we want to take just a 5-minute break? Just to, yes, no? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. 5-minute break. 8:30.
Don't hold me to 5.
5 minutes. It's hard to-
Or we will be here till tomorrow.
Laura. My turn,
Yeah.
Jamie?
Guys, yeah, it doesn't make sense. District wide, so I guess it's probably different grades. Like.
Let's need a few more seconds. Oh my God, I don't know.
Great dinner.
Are we recording? Yes, okay. Committee reports, policy committee meeting. First read, we're not gonna go through and read each one individually. I think everyone had an opportunity to. Would you like?
I'm sorry, was it?
I would like to make a, just under policy. I know we have to do a first read on them, so maybe we'll do a first read and then we could go over this, but I would like to send equity policy back to policy committee now that we have Linda on policy. I'd like to see her expertise on some
I'll second that.
questions.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just as a point of clarification, if you reorganize it to the series where we're recommending,
Right. so
It'll-
you'll change- you'll
it'll be
change
part of it.
right now from policy. I'm sorry, Bob, I'm taking you over on this one. I'm sorry. Is that we were adding a number to it? So it didn't change from anything that happened in May when it was revised, right?
May 20, yes, May 22nd.
We could put it through to give it a number because it currently doesn't have a space within our policy. And then in the meantime, send it back to policy for another look.
Discussion.
Would you be glad with that? Okay,
By the way, Bob.
I'm really sorry, Bob.
Okay. You want to do
You're
that
on.
one?
No, you're on.
All right.
I just wanted to do that before.
I'm going back to the policy committee, we met. And what's happened is, Doug and the administrative staff have gone through the policies and have recommended changes that they brought to the policy committee. We reviewed those changes and agreed to bring them forward. Some as they recommended and some we made some changes to and some we disagreed with, but so that's where we are. The first one, according to the items on the agenda, the equity policy, they did recommend changing the name to learning and also gave it a policy number of 6523.
it'll still be called equity, but it'd be in the learning
different
section,
category.
5,000 series,
Yeah,
instead of standing on by itself like it currently does.
well, we wrote 6,000, but I think you mean 5,000 series, but whatever, it gets a number.
I think we looked at it, we thought 5,000 is where it would go, right?
That's what I thought, but it has the 6,000 on it, so.
And we
The
correct that.
updated one says 652, right?
Yeah,
It's 5,000 now.
so anyway, we review that at the policy committee on Monday and come back with a possible first read or second read the second time. The next is the advertising, promotion, and commercial activities that was updated very recently. There's no recommended changes, so it would just get. What we would do is say we just just react, have it revised as of the date all these get approved. So it have a revision date of March 2023. And again, you can read these. If you have any questions before the next read, we can go over that. But there was no changes. That was the one that allowed the signs to be up on the fields. The next one is community relations regarding automatic external defibrillators. This one, the only changes in it, it changes where it says Board of Education, it puts Regional School District 13 prior to each Board of Education language throughout that, and also in the administrative regulations, which we don't vote on. So it's just the first page of that one. If there's any questions, it's just adding the district's name. The next one is community relations, policy 1000. Is recommended for deletion because it's not really a policy, it's more of a goal, an objective, rather than a policy. So it's recommended for deletion of our policy. So consider that. And that would just disappear.
My consensus was there was a bunch of policies that were in our policies that weren't really policies. They were like more of ways of thought or that were introduced likely by CABE. CABE's mentioned a few times in them. So when Doug and the administration had gone over it, it was deemed that they were more ways of thought than policy.
Yeah, and this is really important to us because we'd like to apply the same lens to each series. So if you guys like the philosophical statements being in there as policies, again, we don't recommend it, but, and the committee didn't, but the rest of the board does. We don't want to keep recommending future ones for deletion that kind of fall into that same category.
Next is community relations, and it's really a distribution of materials by students. And the note that we have is that Doug can speak to this.
Okay, so actually, if I can speak to the next two, because the committee had specifically asked us to reach out to our attorneys for 1326, which is election activities and campaign literature, because there were some things that the committee had suggested. And as it turns out, the attorneys are actually recommending that we delete 1326 and the one before it, 1140. They don't think we need it. And they think that having that policy actually puts us in a worse position around some of these things. And in fact, they actually backed the philosophical statements thing. They kind of made a blanket statement that they don't generally recommend, they being shipmen, which is what the group decided we were going to go with, to really have any significant policies that aren't somehow tied to some state mandate or some state obligation that boards have to do. And again, that may not be this board's position, and I would argue that there might be some policies.
Well, if we had students on the board, we'd have a policy.
Correct. That's a perfect example. But I think if we're following Shipman's advice and you all believe in that, what this process is going to entail a lot of is recommended deletions. And many of these policies have been on the books and haven't been looked at for 10, 15, 20 years or something like that. So I don't think there are policies that have ever really come into play in a significant way. But that's, again, that's a board decision because it will shrink the policy manual and make the ones that we have kind of, I would think, stand out more as ones that people can read and understand.
I think it's important too, when we look at the policies, that if we're looking at deletions, are we doing that on recommendation from Shipman because it doesn't tie to a state mandate? And we do have policies, especially being a smaller regional district, we are going to have policies, or we even have in our system that aren't state mandates. So if we're going to delete something, I would ask that policy review that deletion to see if it could be worded somewhere else in our policy, or if it's necessary to be worded somewhere else. But
no, I think that's a good point, Lindsay. And I think the point you made earlier is probably the one at the heart of most of this. At least that's what Meg believes, and she's spent a lot more time with this over the years than I have. And that is that there probably was a time when this board was leaning more on CABE for their policy services. And that's a lot of these that are more kind of philosophical statements, and Shipman ones are really policies. And you can kind of see that when you compare a Shipman model policy to some of these CABE ones from long ago. And that's nothing, no disrespect to CABE. It's just, that's what
So
we're
the
finding.
first one is to delete 1140. Are there any issues with that? And the second one is to delete 1326. And that's probably under state law that prohibits this activity anyway. So those two be deleted. The next one is, it was not recommended any change to it, but it's under fundraising activities. We had quite a bit of discussion on this, but we decided to, leave it for the moment. It's something that, the issue has come up with GoFundMe and a lot of other funding that other schools have allowed. We have not allowed that. And most of the language in this is in the administrative regulations. So it wouldn't be the policy committee's action on it. So we kind of left it, I think the number, it says series 5,000. So we need to
That's
look at-
because there is actually a shipment model policy
Yeah.
around this that we like better than what we currently have. And so our recommendation is to kind of save this one to when we go through the 5,000 series. But in whatever we keep, to keep it there.
Yeah. So you want to move it there now instead of, and then change it when we get there?
We can, if you guys want us to.
At
give
least
it-
it'll be in
give
the
it a
right-
number for now.
At least it'll come back up in the right category. So
Okay.
we would delete this from series 1,000 and move it into series 5,000 as an action. And then we get the 5,000, we can revise it.
And just for clarification on the equity, I did check, 6,000 is what we recommended,
Yeah.
and that's the learning series, not, and so.
Okay,
You guys,
5,000 more is where I recommended it. We did we decide not to do that?
I thought the group decided to keep it as it was, but again, we don't know. Whatever you guys want is where it goes, so.
What, and I'm sorry, but what's the distinction between the two?
It's just where it fit better. It didn't seem to fit in either perfectly.
It doesn't fit in any category perfectly.
But what is the title of the, like the 5,000 series is?
6,000 was learning, and I think 5,000.
Yeah, it's currently called instruction. We want to change
Oh,
that
got
to
it.
learning. 5,000 is students.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, so,
We can look at that.
so funding activities moves to series 5,000 and we'll debate that later.
Okay.
You got that recorded? The next is community relations. There's a number of changes in this policy 1313. And it really is about gifts and just says you can't take gifts in a lot of ways. Or bribes or anything else like that. So
That's a lot.
Right. In multiple ways.
So, I mean, it's the new language is in it, clarifies it, it's easier to read and clarifies it. Okay. The next one is 1411, and we recommended that for deletion. We do have a school resource officer now, and we don't need this one. The next one is 1118. This was revised on December 22nd, so we don't need to take any action on it at this time. And that would stay in that category. The next one we had a lot of discussion on is policy 1120. Staff recommended to move it to series 9020. It's public participation at board meetings. We had quite a bit of discussion of this under the bylaws of the board and whether or not it should go in there. The bottom line is that we felt that Robert's rules run the meetings, that a lot of the language in here about questions and answers are covered by Robert's rules, and that it could be deleted. So that, this is the one that defined how the meetings were run a lot, and it really kind of yeah, we had a lot of discussion, so it's one that you might want to think about.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we also felt like it belonged in the 9,000 series with all the rest of the board bylaws, because it would be better discussed
Yeah,
when everything related to like the board was discussed.
so we can move this to the 9,000 series and talk about it more when we get to the 9,000, to see if it fits better, like we did. Because we've had a lot of discussion, and make sure we manage the meeting correctly. So we could move that. I would think that would be a good thing to do the same, hit it again under 9,000.
Yeah.
The next one is community relations. This was considered an old cave thing, and it's not really a policy. It's just, kind of a goal and objective, but not really a policy. Just says we should meet with people. And we generally do meet with people.
At least
Bob,
each other.
did you mention 1331?
Yeah, there's the smoking one.
Did I skip it?
Yeah.
It's item K on the agenda.
Prohibition against smoking.
I could speak to it if you want me to.
Well, yeah,
It's pretty
Got it.
I
simple.
don't know where it went, but I did have it here. I have it coming up.
Yeah, it's one of
It's out of order.
It's out of order in the policies, yeah.
All right,
So we'll get to it.
well, the smoking one is prohibition against smoking. There was added language by the staff that added real property as part of the smoking ban. Right.
There's also a shipment model policy in that we're gonna recommend replace this whole policy. Or
We don't have, do we have it yet?
The updated shipment policy is right here.
maybe that's the one we gave you. I'm sorry. The one we gave you is the updated shipment.
All right, so we replaced the old one with, this is a revised policy based on shipment.
Vaping and edibles.
And it adds all the new stuff like.
Yeah, it adds e-cigarettes, cannabis, delivery systems, vapor products, real property or any administrative office.
It's a very good point.
It doesn't prevent cannabis products other than smoking.
Yeah.
I can't wait to that.
I thought. that was
Whoa.
odd.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the shipment one. Anybody got any additions to that?
Was that a woman?
No, because it's not school.
The other one was community relations policy 1210. The staff recommended to delete it, but the policy committee recommended we keep it. Because it deals with PTOs and other board associations and parent and teacher organizations. Perhaps we should change it, but right now we said we would keep it. It is not a legal issue, it's just a policy kind of a goal. But we didn't recommend any changes to this yet this time. The community relations soliciting from our students, policy 1324 was recommended for deletion. This,
It's a duplication of wording from other
Yeah.
policies.
it hits us several times in other places. Next one is, there's policy 1330 is community relations use of school facilities and multi-purpose track and field. There's no changes recommended to that. There's a whole
And that was
series of
just
regulations.
updated in June. That just happens to be in
Yeah, it
the
was
1000 series that
June.
we just are going through. All right.
The next one is 1250. It's visits to school and under community relations. And we thought it was inconsistent with current issues related to security and a variety of other things, so we shouldn't necessarily be encouraging people to walk in there. But, you know, with permission and stuff, so we felt that it was not really a policy.
It was part of that same chunk of K policies from 2009. And like Bob said, it really isn't specific. It's not saying, when I originally looked at it from a board perspective, I thought it was encouraging us as board members to visit the schools, but it's really just about community in general. And with the security base in all the schools, it just doesn't really make sense to have within the policies.
So that wasn't so painful, right? They may get more painful as we go on.
Because next month, theoretically, we'll have these for second read and a whole nother batch for first read.
So next month we vote on these changes and then
We'll take a look.
we'll give you a whole list of 2000 series. If we get through it.
So, going forward, Building committee meeting, February 1st, 2023 report. I'll be back on.
Kim fortunately covered some of this stuff, on the facility update. Recommended to have the, as Kim said, independent estimator and a construction manager as the project went forward early in the project, so they're there for the own time. The turf issue, so we basically, we have to put 50% down of about $700,000. We have about $600,000. And we would have the rest of it by the end of 2024 if we wait. So that was the recommendation that we give them the deposit, get in the queue, and then when we had enough money, we would finish the thing up. Although the track has lasted a lot longer than we anticipated. Maybe our football players aren't big enough, I don't know. But it's
Using that because there's no lights on it, but that's okay.
The memorial roofs and pump house, the memorial roofs are basically done. We're waiting for final settlement. The pump house issue, this is for fire flows between the school and Strong School. We had to do a pump test to see what the pressure was on the fluid water system and our static pressure, whether it was high enough. The pressure is high enough that we probably can use a smaller pump, which would save us a lot of money. So the pump size is getting done. We did the pressure test on January 18th. The pump size, once that gets size, we can then determine how big the facility has to be to hold it. And we have money in the capital for that. The culvert is at the Attorney General's office waiting for the final say. Once that happens, then they'll give us our grant. And then we'll, as Kim says, we should have money left over because we paid for the whole thing and then half of it is eligible. So that should give us about $300,000 back available for road work. So again, that's on Pickett Lane. Went out for basically a reconstruction, a rehabilitation of the road surface for paving. We cut out the drainage and curbing that was in the original proposal. This is going to reclaim the stuff that's there and put a new coat on it and should get us some paving. And it's out to bid. We should get a cost March 3rd. So right away, pretty soon. The field house, we have a purchase order was issued for the big building direct at the name.
Yeah.
And it's for $101,000 out of the $180,000 we budgeted for it. So it's a little smaller than we did. There's some jut outs on that pad that there, and if we built for the jut outs, we would have to either put in more concrete for footings or build it on the slab. And so we chose to build it on the slab. So it's rectangular, there's no jut outs. It's a little bit smaller. I think it's 46 by 85 feet, which is a large piece of building. And we're going to get design information and pictures and stuff like that probably within 2 or 3 weeks, I would think. And then it could be built this summer.
We're hoping for spring.
Yeah, maybe earlier than that.
The comforting thing about that is it's a low maintenance building. I
Yeah.
still have concerns about who's going to maintain the inside, but that's all right. We don't want to make it a burden on the current staff.
No, and I think one of the things we should think about is, and Doug indicated there's another bill in there. If that goes through, it would help, facilitate a build out of the building without any additional cost for us. One of the things I think we should think about is this gets a big piece of white or blue or whatever building it is at the end of the thing. We need to think about what it looks like. It's just going to be a steel, So it might be something that we want to have a large school art project to put a mural of all of our sporting activities on the side as people see. And so it's not just a, could be a major fun project for kids over the next, as long as we have control over it. I think the art teachers would love to do it. And we, that we have very talented artists.
That'd go very well.
I think that you wanted a cupola.
I wanted the cupola, I did.
We have doors. And very few.
We have a
windows.
building.
Good. And,
I believe we're
it
gonna
has
get a picture.
electricity.
They're supposed to provide a picture to the board.
Yeah.
So we can see what it looks like once they have it all.
So that was the building committee.
I did have the privilege to attend for the first time, and we are very, very blessed to have professionals, true professionals that are enthusiastic, have the best interest of the district and the community, and that was just really wonderful to see.
They are great.
And they're very frugal, very frugal. So. Okay, item number 10 is communications. I do not have any communications that have not already been sent to all the board members. So that you are aware of them. I don't know if anyone else has anything that they wanted to add. Any other communication?
I think I had emailed Jen just communications I had received from parents about and you had already answered the OT.
Oh, yeah, that was to the whole.
Yeah, you did. That was the only one.
And last thing is public comment. It doesn't look like we have anyone here. Is anyone hiding in the, and do we have any remote comments?
We do.
Okay.
We have 2 hands raised. Christina. Christina, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Smith. I'm from the town of Durham, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Middlefield Children's Center will be reducing its offerings for the 23-24 school year for before and after school care to kindergarten through 2nd grade. So this leaves 3rd and 4th graders with one age appropriate facility in town, Dolphin Days, which we all know is often waitlisted. I had already reached out to Dr. Shook, and he was extremely kind and responsive. Thank you, Dr. Shook. I just want to take this opportunity tonight to bring it to the whole board's attention in hopes that there'll be a further discussion, perhaps with soliciting providers or maybe an opportunity to run a before and after school care through a park and rec department. My hope is that this can be investigated and options be given to the residents, because we're going to end up in a predicament, myself included. I have a 3rd grader currently, and come 4th grade, we are on the wait list for Dolphin Days, but there's nothing guaranteed. So it's going to leave a lot of us scrambling. That's all I have to say. Thank you all. I realize it's a late night, and I appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carl? Carl, can you hear us?
We got mad about the cupola.
Oh, I didn't have to.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
sir.
yes, we can.
All right, because I tried last time. Apparently I didn't do the right procedure. I was at last meeting, but I didn't make it. The meeting was breaking up before I realized I wasn't in. Anyhow. Excess space at Storage, High School, Memorial. Brewster School, talking about repurposing. Let's make efficient use of the buildings we have rather than trying to delve into elaborate buildings. Let's concentrate on the students' education. That's more important than having elaborate facilities. I mean, if I heard a comment right tonight, only 58% of the students are up to par. There was a comment made in the past, the math scores were down, but we don't have any math coaches at the high school. I mean, what's more important, facilities or elaborate facilities, or the students' education? In the storage building, that's ridiculous. That's an elaborate luxury want item. It was talking about being just a storage building. But oh no, here we go. And it is going to contribute significantly to the operating budget. Now, you talked about your budget tonight and how the operating costs are way up. Well, this is another way to try to bring operating costs down. Get rid of that building. And make efficient use of the buildings that you already have. And I want to thank Bob for bringing up the point about the excess space at the other buildings. I've mentioned it in the past. It's something we need to take a look at. Will it be a book scenario as far as their education, as far as the layout? No, but what's more important is the use of the existing space and the students getting the education that they need. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Is there anyone else?
Lucy, can I have one more communication? I did go to the Corn School Community Center opening. Jason did, Amanda did. Is, you know, it really, I think the people, a couple hundred people that went there really felt that it was a, you know, a great use. I assume it's gonna be hard to keep it running, but there is a room there for after school program, already had the name on the wall. So it may be something that you can look at. And as mentioned, Kevin, during COVID, we did approach Dolphin Days, who indicated they would run a program, but there wasn't enough interest for them to run it at our facilities. So I don't know with the other school closing, if the interest is peaked enough to go back and ask Dolphin Days again. And we offered them to use of our buildings older because they didn't have any more room at there.
Yeah.
So might be worth asking the question once again.
Yeah, I think looking at what Durham's already done with corn, just in the meantime, like there's a whole like room for, like Bob said, just for kids who want to come and do homework. It's centrally located, you know, right coming down in between Strong and the high school. So I think that the town itself is really encouraged to see that, you know, we'll have kids that want to go down there and, you know, eventually maybe a game room and interact with our seniors kind of in one building, and I think it'll be great.
Okay. Anyone else online? No more arms, no more hands up. No. Okay, seeing no more comment, we have a motion to adjourn.
Make motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good, good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A lot accomplished tonight. Long meeting. A lot of-